Welcome back to another episode of the Hodge-Cast. Today, I got really giddy for this one. Woke up extremely excited as we've got returning guest to the show, Jay Anderson from Project Unity. How are we doing, Jay?
Very well.
Awesome, man. It's good to see you. Looking good.
Thank
looking
you.
fresh.
You're looking good as well.
So
you got a nice improvement on the studio space. It's a nice little upgrade.
Because you came to our old studio, which was filmed sort of just on the outskirts of Manchester. Mm-hmm. So we're in the heart of Liverpool now.
Heart of Liverpool,
And it's good to have you back.
That's a
Admittedly, and it's ignorance on my part, mate, when I got you on, the SARS scans had just broke out and kind of gone viral on the internet, and we kind of just got you on and focused on that. And then it was only afterwards I realised, actually, this guy knows so much about all this other stuff that I'm really interested in. And I kind of felt as though we did you a bit of a disservice. The interview was great, but I felt as though it was a bit of a disservice. So do you know what, Jay? I'm going to let you tell your sort of origin story, because we're going to be speaking quite a lot, as the title will suggest. We're going to be speaking quite a lot about all this UFO, UAP, disclosure, lost history. We're just going to shoot from the hip, I think, on this one. But I think a good way to lay the foundations would be tell everyone your story.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, it's not your fault. For the last few years, I've been really focusing on ancient history. And then with the pyramid scans, that was kind of the big talking point to discuss. So don't worry about that. You have to kind of go a little bit deeper to find some of the other things that I've been interested in. But yeah, I kind of started off really with an interest in the UFO subject, which has never left. And I think that there are some really interesting correlations between our ancient history and the discussion about non-human intelligence and the interactions over time and what we see in the modern world when it comes to UFOs. But I mean, to be honest, and I said this to Joe Rogan, I started Project Unity off of the back of a lot of synchronistic events taking place in my life. And I never really expected to be doing any of the things that I'm doing now. But it came from me. I mean, I've always been a curious person, but it came from a certain period of time in my life. It was like near the end of university. And I was feeling very lost. I was feeling, there was a lot of things going on in my life at that time, relationships and university stress and just a whole bunch of things. And so I ended up in quite a depressive place at that point. And it was actually my dad who reached out to me. He was in France at the time, and he knew I was not in a good way. He was like, look, I think you should just come out. I'm in the countryside right now for this work thing, and I think it would do you a lot of good to come out and be there. And I was like, okay, cool. So I go to France and have a nice time hanging out. And he had these books on audio tape that he wanted me to listen to. He said, I think they'll do you a lot of good. And it's a series of books called Conversations with God by this guy called Neil Donald Walsh. I don't know if have you heard of?
I don't think so, no.
Might be a good guest at some point. I don't know if he'd come over to the UK, but he's a really interesting guy. It's you kind of put these books into the channeled works category of things where people claim to have had some form of channeled information. At that point, I wasn't really accustomed to that type of, category of books. So it was very new to me. And I was in a bit of a depression. So I wasn't exactly in a position where I wanted to accept this. I was like, okay, I'll listen to him, Dad, because I appreciate, you getting me out here and everything. But I don't see how it's going to really help. And so I, kind of begrudgingly would sit down and listen to these books. It really didn't take long for me to realize that there was something quite profound about what this man had experienced and what he was claiming to have received in terms of information. And a lot of it was addressing, in general terms, personal issues that were really resonating with me at that time, and the answers, because the way that it's done in these books, and I'm not here to preach them like a Bible, because I don't think it works that way. I think there's a million different paths to coming to some form of realization about reality. But what happened for me is these books were like a dialogue. This man claims to have had a conversation with God. He went through an extremely disruptive life path, became homeless. He was a radio DJ, and then he got into a car accident, broke his neck, became homeless, was on the street for a couple of years, got his apartment back, and he wrote an angry letter to God because he was stressed about his life and everything that was going on. And he got woken up at 3 a.m. with this desire to write down on a yellow legal pad. And that's when this apparent dialogue with, God began, and he was having this conversation. But the answers in these books, man, they were really profound. They were very simple answers to things that you would be struggling with as a young man or a young woman, just kind of making your way through life. And so it really kind of put a spark of an idea into my head, because I'd had quite a resistance to God before then, in terms of a patriarchal figure in the sky that dominates and engineered our reality. And I'm like, that never meshed with me. But I was always very curious. And so this was the first introduction into my life of a different idea of God, that God is not just some kind of, patriarchal figure with a beard, but is in essence all energy represented as a single form, as a singularity, core consciousness, universal mind, however you want to look at that. And that we are individuated nodes of that consciousness. And this was the first kind of introduction of that. And it really did start sparking ideas in my mind about what is consciousness, what is reality, what is my purpose and perspective and relationship to all of this. And I started reading a lot of different material from biophysics and quantum, all at layman level. I don't claim to be a scientist because I'm not. But I got very interested in trying to understand the mind and consciousness from both the spiritual and the scientific perspective, looking at, metaphysics and philosophy, but also looking at quantum mechanics and biology and how, the bleeding edge of modern physics is looking at the body as some sort of antenna, some sort of conduit or receiver for energy. And so that all started to mesh and make sense to me. A few years of researching these things, completely privately, not publicly in any format. And it did actually end up leading me, funnily enough, towards another depression. And this time it was more about the idea that I had accumulated a lot of information about, these very esoteric and high order questions about life and reality. And, it's all very big, but what does it mean? Does it help me in my life? I'm still paying my bills. I'm still stressed. I'm still this, that, and the other. And it was like, well, what does all of this even mean for me? Like, why am I accumulating all of this knowledge? And is it knowledge? Is it even worth it? Has it got a point to it? So I was sitting on my bed one night, maybe like 2018. And I just you could call it a prayer, but I was just speaking out loud to the universe. I was like, look, I believe that these things are real and that it's extremely important to try and get an understanding of, universal mind and consciousness and our relationship to reality. And I've been absorbing all this stuff. But none of it's helping me and none of it's actually benefiting me. And I want something more. I want proof. I want a real event. I want a situation that is tangible and proves that these things are worth exploring more. And so I made that request to the universe and nothing happened. And then about a week later, my best friend was like, oh, I've been watching this documentary. You got to check it out. It's really good. I think you'll like it. I was like, okay, what's it called? He said it's called Unacknowledged by this guy called Dr. Steven Greer.
Okay.
So this was my first introduction to Greer. Do you want to say anything? Because I can talk
No,
for
listen, I'm fascinated. Years. I think it's good that you get all this out, and then when it comes to the more the stuff that has a bit more substance,
that's it. This is just the Batman origin story. He said there's this documentary. I was not a UFO guy, so I wasn't aware of who Steven Greer was, but I was like, yeah, sure, let's watch it. Great documentary. I don't know, have you seen Unacknowledged?
I've seen all of his. I wouldn't know the name of it, so
it's one of the first ones, but it's kind of the main one where they bring everyone out on stage, and it's like, I remember showing my granddad that, and he was like, God, all these people are like military and government. I was like, yeah, it's military and government. It's like very serious, and he did it very well. Do I trust everything in there? That's again, you got to take everything with a pinch of salt, especially in the UFO subject, a lot of disinformation. But it was a very interesting documentary, and near the end of that documentary is where he introduces this concept that he's quite well known for, which is CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I was like, what's this? And he said it's essentially this, in a nutshell, it's the idea that you yourself can initiate a form of contact with these other intelligences in the universe and in wider reality through getting into certain states of mind. And through essentially, quote unquote, projecting those intentions and those thoughts into the wider reality, something of a similar or higher level of sophistication can see this and respond and may choose to respond. And you'll have a contact event. You'll have a UFO. You'll have lights in the sky. And there's all these videos of people doing them in night vision in fields with laser pointers and things are, flashing. And I'm like, is this like, seriously? This lines up with everything that I've been looking at in terms of like the concepts of universal mind. Here's a guy telling me that you can use those concepts in a practical way to actually have some form of experience. And I couldn't help but immediately be brought back to the week prior when I was sitting on my bed. And I was like, well, okay, this feels like this is the answer to the request I was making. Like, try this method. And if it works, hey presto, there you go. That's the answer, right? So I went out into my back garden and I started doing it all the time. And it was like around the summertime, so it was quite warm in the UK. It was warm enough to be out in the garden. It wasn't long until I started seeing weird stuff. And I've always been a sky watcher. I mean, I love lying out in the field, watching watching the stars and the planets and shooting stars. I know what satellites look like. I'm not an idiot. Like, I know what is normal in the sky and what's not normal. And it's really weird because what happened with me is it certainly felt like a kind of step-by-step progression in terms of what was being shown what I was seeing in the night sky, and then eventually having some very visceral, profound experiences that I can't really, you know, turn away from in any way. Like they're 100% strange and unexplainable. But before that, there were things like a huge influx of what looked like satellites. So they looked like satellite, little white orbs going through space. But we're talking like up to 20 to 25 of them coming from different directions, like all points of the sky within 10 minutes, just like a very busy night sky when I'm doing these practices. And it was just like, okay, that's weird. But it was very light, only enough to kind of maybe make me keep doing it, but not enough to be like an undeniable event of some form. But it was enough to keep me curious. And that would happen. You'd have this influx of lights. And then I would start to see that some of these lights would be coming across the sky and they were white, like a satellite. But it'd be like a little pinprick of white light, and then it would start to glow and glow and glow and get really bright and then flash at like the apex of this glow and bring itself back down again. Not once or twice, but like 4 or 5 times, and not sequentially, as in 1, 2, but in what felt like direct response to me sending a thought. Like, I know how this sounds, but we can talk about some of the actual biophysical anchors into empirical science about why this might be a real thing, quantum communication and quantum biology. But before we get into all of that, this is what was happening, is that these things were apparently, at least from my perspective, making a flashing appearance when I was thinking certain thoughts. And then you'd see another one and another one. And then there were flashes of light in a void of space that was just no discernible object, just a bright white flash. And you'd look up and you'd, again, send another thought or, you know, kind of focus on that area with your mind. And then you'd see another flash. And then another flash, no movement, no discernible object, just a void of space and flashes. And that was what started off as being the kind of like the normal occurrence. We're seeing these glowing flashes and these random disembodied flashes in space that seem to not be attached to an object. And then in 2019, and around August, is when I had these very profound experiences with orange orbs of light that came down from the sky. They hovered above the roof of my house. They flew over the sky in various formations. I saw them 4 times, 4 separate occasions. And that was what completely projected me into having to pick up a camera, put it on a tree branch and start actually introducing myself to the world and saying like, hey, I've had these experiences with these orbs of light and it came through these modes of consciousness. And again, I'm not a meditative practitioner. And I think that's also what really kind of bolstered my desire to be public about it, is that I'm not some trained meditative guy. I'm a very normal person. I've had abnormal experiences and I've gone off on a pretty abnormal research path and career choice. So sure, I'm not like a normal guy in that respect, but I'm a very average person if you meet me and hang out with me. I'm not on a mountaintop meditating in a robe, you know what I mean? And I could do it. I was capable of having these experiences. And we can talk in more detail about the orange orbs because I think they're really important. And there's some ideas around them. But in a nutshell, yes, I had like these interactions with light phenomena, maybe plasma phenomena that I think might have some form of sentience to it, especially in relation to these orbs of light. And that catalyzed me into putting a camera on a tree branch out in the woods away from my neighbors. I didn't want anyone hearing me, you know, talking about this stuff. And I was just like, you know, this is real. I've done it. I think you can do it too because I'm just a normal guy. So I'm pretty sure you can do it. This is how I was doing it. And it started from there, you know, and a lot of things happened after that, but that's the intro.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that, Jay. And I know you've told that story.
I don't think I breathed much then.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, I better start talking, give your throat a bit of a rest.
I'm terrible, man.
But no, it's great. It's fascinating. And I think as well, you know, you mentioned you're not really, you're just a normal guy. And I think that gives you more credibility, mate.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those where you're not someone who's sort of coming out with these outlandish ideas because you had a bit of a checkered past, what have you, and you sort of, you know, what's the term that the mainstream like to throw, grifters, you know, the actual grifters. Yeah. You're coming at it from, you're just a guy who's gone through a series of depression. I've suffered with that myself. You've tried to find answers. It's maybe not worked out. And then you've found another alternative. And now you're kind of, I dare say you probably found your purpose in that moment. Would that be an accurate assumption? Because you've never really looked back since then.
No, I haven't looked back since then. And
Project Unity.
With everything I've been doing with Project Unity, it's not, I mean, obviously I do work hard. I go out and I edit videos and I travel, I do documentaries, and I do interviews, and it's work, but it's all been very intuitive. Like it's all kind of flowed to me very quickly and easily. And when I started my YouTube channel, initially I was just talking on camera, like I said, in the forest, and, you know, giving my opinion on the orb phenomena and what this means, but I got thrown into like the whole world of, you know, spies and spooks and meeting up with these people quite quickly. I was going to say,
you've interviewed an eclectic mix of people on your channel. Yeah. So
all of the UFO
you really
people.
have been thrust into that space.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to that because you referenced there as well. The last time you was on the show, I think it was a little over a year ago.
Something like that.
And you've been on quite the ride since then.
It's been busy.
I mean, we've had on Jesse Michaels, Matt Bell, and then obviously the podfather himself, Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
I have to ask you, how was that, man?
It was a very surreal experience.
Pretty unreal, yeah.
It was amazing. It went very quickly. It was quite kind of sat down and the headphones went on and bam, we were on the record. So I was watching it back when it first came out. I was like, man, I'm nervous. You can tell I'm a bit nervous, but it was...
That's normal, though. I mean, you know,
it's Joe Rogan.
If someone like who's been thrust into this space, like yourself, you know, you're essentially a YouTuber who's gone viral in some aspects. And of course, you was one of the leading names. That's why we invited you on for the SARS scans last year. You've kind of just been, you know, on a bit of a rocket ship holding the pun straight into this whole alternative stratosphere.
It's definitely been a fast-paced year.
I just want to say, you might have come across nervous, but you smashed it. I thought you did awesome on that, man.
That, bro.
I was listening to it again last night. And
it went off in a lot of different directions, which is what I like.
That's what we like,
it's enjoyable. But yeah, I mean, it's a very, very surreal experience, but I'm very happy to had the opportunity. When I got the DM from him, I was just like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I was actually with my family. It was a good moment. I was just like, oh my God, I got a message.
And it's good when, young Brits who are in this space. We had Michael Button on the show and he's a similar format.
I've been meaning to get him on.
Yeah, you two would definitely get on. He's great, Michael. And Michael sort of comes at it from an academic perspective. But equally, he's open-minded to buy into, well, I say buy into, believe some of the stuff that the alternative space put out. But no, he's a good guy. Going back to your sort of interpretation when with your experience with the orbs. I mean, I'm quite new to the UFO space, big on the lost history stuff, and we're definitely going to get into that today. But I think with the UFO stuff, I'm quite a novice, for lack of better phrasing. But from what I can see, from my perspective looking into it, I buy into more interdimensional over extraterrestrial. I don't know if that's a common thread for yourself. You've fully lived and breathed this, Jay. What's your kind of stance on your findings?
Yeah, I kind of like, I mean, at least in relationship to my own experiences, I tend to vacillate between a few different ideas about what it is. But the idea that it's something that's kind of piercing in through a different fold of reality, a different dimensional manifold, makes more sense to me, even though it's such an outlandish idea.
I think for me, sorry to jump in there. I think for me, I can't wrap my head around the when you extrapolate space as a whole, just our solar system, the physics and the science, we are nowhere near. I know Elon Musk is planning on taking us to Mars, but I don't think we're anywhere near that, let alone leaving the solar system to then start going out to further galaxies. Just we haven't got the technical prowess to do that yet, and we're nowhere near that, to my understanding. I'll caveat that by saying I'm not an engineer or a scientist, but I think that's common knowledge. So that's why I can't subscribe to the extraterrestrial. And speaking to various people as well who've had these experiences, it does seem more, from a different sort of plane of reality.
Well, I suppose for a lot of people, especially physicists, the expansion of the universe and the fact that galaxies and solar systems are all drifting further apart from each other is a good reason to doubt the idea, especially like you said, because of the conventional technology that we have operational for space-based travel. It's not even close to Alpha Centauri, let alone Mars, or not even close to Mars, let alone Alpha Centauri, actually, on the other way around, closest star. So yes, there's that level, but then of course you have to look at it from the perspective of exotic technologies and the possibility of, well, maybe these creatures, these intelligences could fold space and time. Like that's kind of like the classic Hollywood idea where they fold the piece. What's the closest position between 2 points, and they draw an A and a B, and they draw a line down it, and you fold it, and you punch through, right? So the idea that these technologies exist that could punch through wormholes, traversable wormholes, Einstein's idea of the Einstein-Rosen bridge, these ideas of wormholes that could be traversable, and maybe there is the potential that a technology at some point, Arthur C. Clarke's third law, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? So it might appear magical to us a craft appearing in midair, but could very well be a technological avenue leading towards that we're just far away from in our more primordial position as human beings with our combustion rockets and things like that. So like, yes, there is an argument to be made that extraterrestrials might not be able to visit us, but that's also kind of putting it within the paradigm of human technological expectations and projections, whereas we're dealing with something inherently alien. It could be, they might even be from a place that has completely different elements, completely different chemical makeup, right? And they might have figured things out faster. But the interdimensional element is a bit stronger for me.
Yeah, that's the one I subscribe to.
Because, especially with contact, like this idea of being able to send mental requests, let's say, and something picking that up. Now, do I believe that there are aliens in spaceships just hanging around waiting for some form of mental phone call and going, oh, there we get? No, that doesn't make any sense. It has to be above time. It has to be beyond time. Otherwise, it'd be a waste of time. Right. So I don't think time really figures into their ability to come and interact with you when you're making these, projections and intentions for contact. So that's where I'd lean towards something that supersedes time and space and can interact with us. And also, maybe even if we're talking about universal mind, universal God, it could just be the universe itself responding to you. It might not even have an actual determinate coordinate in space and time. It might just be a flash of light that disappears afterwards, and there's no tangible reason for it existing other than to say hello to you because you asked the universe to say hello to you. It could be something like that. There's a lot of different reasons for these things. Sentient plasma as well with the orbs, but we can get into that a little deeper.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, what's you must have come across and done some research on the whole concept of breakaway civilizations. So obviously that sort of blends in nicely with the Graham Hancock stuff. But I think sort of the breakaway civilization as there being, how I interpret it, you could correct me if needs be, but it's a case of civilizations from our ancient past had technology probably far more advanced and I dare say abstract to what we're familiar with. And these encounters are potentially us from the past in the future. If I've articulated that right,
what's interesting
that broke away from that time period.
Yeah, what's interesting is when you kind of like lift the lid on the government disclosure narrative and the mainstream disclosure. A lot of the people who are proponents of UFO disclosure in government also do have these beliefs about like the Greek gods being real and that these were actually non-human beings that interacted with us throughout time. A lot of them do believe in Atlantis and that this is, the lineage of a non-human influence and presence on Earth that was at some point disrupted by cataclysm. And interestingly enough, Tom DeLonge, Tom DeLonge, Blink-182, a lot of people might not know that all of the UFO disclosure, American-based UFO disclosure that's happening right now basically got jump-started by Tom DeLonge. Did you know that?
Yes. In fact, it was you who you spoke about this before.
Many times, but the most unlikely of characters in a way. Until you research the guy, you find out he's obsessed with UFOs. He has been his whole life, and he's a rock star, so he had the money and the influence to probably pick up friends along the way. But yeah, he was actually like the main guy who connected all of these people and got the ball rolling. And then the New York Times came out with their story about the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program and Lou Elizondo, and that was all Tom. But he even said multiple times on the radio, like, when he was on podcasts, like, oh yeah, the Greek gods are real, like, all of this stuff. He's basically just kind of regurgitating what he was clearly told in these, little meetings at the Pentagon and stuff like that. So yeah, the old gods and the continuation of that, like the Anunnaki and the bloodlines, like that's all for sure, like something to consider as like a part of the
my sort of thing with that is, because we've had many discussions about religion on this show, and I always, it's a big old telephone game, isn't it? I always think that these myths, and just circling back to the Greek gods, is something must have started from somewhere.
There has to be a seed, right?
Yes, it might have been changed and exaggerated as time's gone on, but like you said, there needs to be a seed. There needs to be something that created all this.
Same with the flood myths. Globally,
exactly. Well, that great example. I mean, every religion, every sort of mythology has a flood story. Obviously, most notably here in the West, Christianity, Noah's Ark. And again, we can sort of segue into this, I'm sure. But like, when people talk about the reptilians and the greys and the reptile, they all stem, there's always in religious context, there's some sort of reptilian being that's there as well.
Yeah.
And I know David Icke, who we both interviewed, gets a lot of flack for that. But when you suspend your disbelief and listen to David, I know he has a tendency to talk and make a few leaps. He does hold some valid points, I think, when it comes to outlining that. And then again with the flood.
Oh yeah,
myths.
like I mean, I don't know what kind of reptilian presence specifically might be around us, but the mythology and the symbology across cultures and across timelines for the snake, the serpent, is really quite strong. To the point where it's like, well, what exactly does that mean for us then, going all the way back through these various theologies that, like, it's very typically seen as the deceiver and the usurper or the devil, quite literally. So, yeah. I don't know where I sit on reptilion overlords and the royal family and all that, but like at the same time, like we live in a bizarre universe and we don't even know 0.1% of it. So
yeah,
all cards are on the table.
Exactly. And I think it's either David Icke or he got it from Socrates. It's the more you think you know, the more you actually don't know.
Exactly.
And I think the people who try and profess to be the most intelligent and have all the answers are usually the ones who know the bare minimum.
They're the red flags, like for sure.
I'm very much, and the older I get, and I suspect you're like this as well, Jay, I want to present myself as thick. I want to be educated and learn new things. And I don't get me wrong, there's a high level of common sense, or at least I think there is in there. But equally, I'm incredibly open-minded.
I mean, I'm open. I certainly, don't think that we should be dismissive of things when we've barely understood our reality. Like,
exactly.
And again, like when we kind of segueing back to plasma, for example, like 99% of the observable universe is made of plasma. Okay, so that's a lot.
A hell of a lot, yeah.
But we're not taught about plasma, really. You're taught about your solids, your gases, your liquids.
Yeah, because I had that same belief. Why are we not? Because I wasn't taught about it in school. I'm 35, you're
31.
So yeah, it's around about the same age. So I wasn't taught about that. And I often have that thought process, why? And I'm probably giving a bit of substance here to the mainstream, but is it because they don't know much about it to be able to educate us?
It's not as easy to talk about in terms of solids, gases, and liquids, because plasma is a very strange, almost ethereal type of substrate in reality, but it's still like, one of the most fundamental things to discuss.
It should at least be acknowledged.
It should very well be acknowledged. And plasma is fascinating in that regard. And I've started to lean towards the idea with my orb phenomena experiences.
Sure, let's get into the orb stuff, Jay, because we're going to end up going on a tangent and never getting back to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's possible that they're a form of self-organizing plasma, an intelligent plasma, maybe not even extremely intelligent, potentially just animalistic. I don't know yet. But it's very interesting. There was actually a NASA study. It was done by about 15 different institutes. I did a video on my YouTube channel about it, where they were looking at space-based plasma and atmospheric-based plasma. Yeah. And they were seeing strange behaviors with these plasmas, almost like predatory and like group hunting and like swarming behaviors. Attraction to electromagnetic energy at high voltage and high flux, like lightning storms, like they'd like seem to cluster around lightning storms. And there was also quite a famous event, which the mainstream will dismiss as ice particles, but I still refute that it's ice particles. But there was this NASA mission, I think it's called STS-75. It's quite famous, where this huge 2-kilometer long tether broke off of a satellite and was like drifting through space, and it was producing this incredible amount of electromagnetic energy. And you could see it in this black and white video, and this huge glowing tube just kind of floating through space. And then all of these little orb-like circles or spheres suddenly come around this tube and are just like floating around it. And it was dismissed as ice particles drifting in the background, but someone actually added the flight paths onto these, like tracked the individual flight paths, and you saw these things doing complete directional changes. And so the idea that there is a form of potentially just animalistic plasma-based intelligence, right? Like a plasma-based animal that lives in the upper atmosphere, that exists and potentially subsists off of electromagnetic energy. And this is where you get into the biophysics of it, because what I'm talking about in terms of getting into states of mind, it sounds extremely woo-woo. It sounds like, you send your thoughts and you project your heart.
You've been in the States too long.
You send love out into the world. But it's like, okay, cool. You can laugh at people like that. I understand. They're not wrong, but you can laugh at them because they present it in a way that is not really the way to present it in our modern world. And what I really like to try and do is provide at least some form of empirical anchor into science to say, look, there are actual positions in science now in the modern, right on the edge of the bleeding edge of biophysics that are saying these things are possible, that quantum interaction with human bodies is possible on a conscious level. And this is one of these very controversial elements of biology because quantum effects only happen at extremely cold temperatures, like quantum superposition and these like entanglement properties of quantum particles. These things happen at extremely low temperatures. So the argument against any of these kind of like quantum effects happening within a biological system is that the biological system is wet, it's warm, it's noisy. It's all of the things that you don't want for a quantum state. But we're now piercing deeper into the brain, deeper into the neural architecture, discovering things like microtubules, these little helical structures that are inside our neurons, tiny, tiny microcellular little antenna. And there's a very interesting theory. This is about my orbs, by the way. It's just kind of like, these are the things you need to discuss to start understanding that it's not all just hocus pocus magic. I'm not trying to just tell you to believe in some magic. There is a theory, the orchestrated objective reduction theory, OR. I interviewed one of the authors of it, Stuart Hameroff. He's an anesthesiologist. The other co-author is Sir Roger Penrose. You might have heard that name. He's quite a well-known guy, done a lot of podcasts. And their position is that these microtubules inside the neurons actually isolate quantum effects and can allow for quantum processing in the brain. And it's beginning to open the door and provide an explanatory avenue for how strange effects in consciousness can take place. Psychic abilities, things that invoke the idea of non-locality, that your consciousness is somehow interacting beyond the constraints of the brain, the skull, the body interface. This is a very, heavily disputed position in biophysics, in consciousness, in philosophy studies. Is consciousness generated by the brain, or is it in some way a field phenomena that we are tuning into through a very complex set of receivers and subcellular antennas? Well, we seem to be finding one of those subcellular antennas, which is the microtubules. So what I'm saying is that, and this is another interesting point about these, is that they have done studies into the effects of meditative states of consciousness, and these do excite your microtubule networks. They do create this kind of self-organizing property within the biology of the human body. Things start to align and communicate with each other across distances within the body, relative, but across distances within the body does mean like galactic distances. When an atom down there is communicating with an atom up here, that's like crossing the universe, brother. You know what I mean? They're all floating around in like an entangled soup. So there is a level of quantum entanglement just on your own body. What I think is you just scale it up. I think we're inside it might not be a body, but we're inside a mind. So you're a neuron in a mind, or you're a microtubule, maybe you're even smaller, but you're an element within that larger network. And when you get into certain states of consciousness where your chattering monkey mind shuts up, because that's the thing with the Western world especially, right, is we have been just kind of saturated.
Too many distractions, yeah.
Mate, from the cellular to the psychological, all the way across the board, we are saturated with noise and pollution, right? Every day. I'm a victim of it. First thing I do when I wake up is check my X feed, and I get pissed off. I'm just like,
great start to the day.
Yeah, exactly. Like start off with low vibrational energy. And, we're in an uphill battle in the Western world, especially because, if you're born in the Amazon basin, you've got a better shot at getting into these higher consciousness states than you do if you're born in South London. So, there's an uphill battle for us about trying to recapture that natural state of consciousness. So it seems alien to us, these ideas of getting into these states of consciousness. But what happens when you get into them is weird shit. And that's where we're at. We're at this point of like, okay, and that's where I'm at. I can get into these states of consciousness. I can say in my mind and in my, in my heart, again, it's true. People laugh, but it's like, also the heart produces a stronger electromagnetic field than the brain and has enough neural architecture within it to be called a little brain. The cardio neural system. I forgot the full name of it because I'm not a doctor. But it's real and very powerful, stronger than your brain. So when you say feeling with the heart, you're feeling with the heart, man. Like when you get that actual feeling from emotions in your heart, that's your heart feeling things. Okay. So again, just kind of explaining to people that it's not all just abstract spiritual feel with your heart. No, you're projecting, you're using brain-heart synchrony. You're using electromagnetic coupling between your thought processes, your emotions, your intentions. You're exciting your body on a biophysical level by aligning all of your desires towards a singular outcome. I want something to communicate with me. I want something to respond to this message. I want something to actually acknowledge that it can hear this. And you're doing it from every single level, right? You're getting very kind of like meditatively tapped into a state of trance-like consciousness where you're projecting these intentions. And I think this is what's happening. I do think that there are quantum effects happening within the body. I think the body itself on a very, very tiny micro scale level is aligning and communicating. Energy is starting to output at an even more intense rate. And as we do know, the electromagnetic field from the heart and the brain extends out into about 3 feet diameter around you. So your electromagnetic field and mine are entangled right now. There is an energetic transfer between us that we can't see. Maybe that's what people who can see an aura are seeing. They're seeing the subtle electromagnetic fluctuations of your body putting out energy, because you're constantly putting out energy.
Well, it's this strands of David Icke getting a mention again now, but he talks about visible light.
Of course, yeah.
You know, it's not in our band of frequency.
We're on a tiny little bandwidth.
And that's like, mainstream science
again,
as well, yeah.
You know, the height of arrogance to say that, I believe it when I see it. It's like, dude, like you can barely see shit. The universe is 99% blocked off from you. But what I'm saying, especially in relationship to these orbs and the idea that they might be some form of animal that's attracted to electromagnetic energy. You are an electromagnetic being, you produce it passively, and you can increase the output of that through conscious methods. So if you're getting into states of meditative consciousness, increasing the amplitude of your electromagnetic field, who's to say that these things aren't just like fish that nibble on the salt on your toes? It's like consciousness salt. You know, you're putting out enough of it and they're just like, I want to come up and swim around and maybe nibble a bit of that electromagnetic. It doesn't have to be so profound as like I've opened the Samadhi door to the new teachers and they've come through the universal gate and they're teaching me that, it might not be that. It might be. It might be.
It could well be, Jay.
It might be. And I'm not even saying it's not, but I'm saying that there are also possibilities that these things could actually be understood through science, not just through biophysics, but through biology at large, in terms of like, turns out there's plasma fish. Turns out there's these atmospheric creatures that we didn't really know exist. And when I first saw them come down close, when they came down from the sky and 3 of them and hovered above the roof of my house, they came down, like they zipped across the sky, these 3 orange orbs in my back garden. I saw them move across and they stopped on a dime. And they started coming down. They were descending around each other like this. They were doing this kind of like rotational type of thing, which a lot of people have like commented on in terms of like the MH370 video. I don't know if you know Ashton Forbes.
Of course.
I'm not a big fan of that. I think MH370 is probably not real, but I get a lot of hate and love for that. Depends on which community you put your foot into.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to please everyone in this space, Jay.
But they are rotating around each other in that plane video, and like a lot of people are like, oh, it's interesting, they're rotating. It's like, yeah, true. They were rotating around each other, and they froze above the roof of my house, like about 2 feet, 3 feet above the roof of my house. They were like roughly basketball sized, slightly transparent, circular more than spherical in a weird way. The best way I've described them to a photographer is an effect called bokeh or bokeh, which is where you film, you'll have seen it, like when you film like a highway at night and you out focus so that all of the cars just become circles of light, right? You just get those like red circles and blue circles. They looked like that. They were just like cutouts of slightly transparent orange light that hovered and then froze a few feet above the house. And one of the things that I've thought about more and more, and especially in relationship to plasma, is that they weren't giving off a surface reflection. There was such a weird light. It was a light, but it wasn't a light. So it wasn't glowing. There was no glow coming off of it. Even
so it wasn't necessarily hurting your eyes, like if you were to look into these lights?
Not in the slightest.
Okay,
no,
interesting.
It was like a ghost. It very much there, enough to be very much there, but like a weird, transparent, orange circle, 3 of them. And again, they were like, the lowest one was like that high above the roof of my house. Sorry, I'm talking.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
The lowest one was like literally about that high off the roof. You'd expect a ball of literal light to be glowing, but it wasn't glowing. There was no reflection onto the actual roof. And so I didn't really know what to think about that until I did more research. And some of the high threshold plasma physics testing that they do in these, vacuum chambers where they produce these plasma phenomena, it scatters light in different bandwidths, not into our visible light. So it's very likely, or possible at least, that these things were a novel plasma phenomena that's scattering light through bandwidths that aren't visible light for humans. So I can just about perceive them, but they're not fully interacting with the environment because the photons, the photons are actually kind of self-generating and going back into itself, or in some way scattering across the bandwidth that's not perceptible to humans. So there's like a little flicker or a ghost image that you get. And I was like, well, that's interesting that there is actually a demonstration of that in plasma physics, that you do get these effects where the light will completely change from what we understand to be normal behavior, which is why I give space to the idea that they're plasma, whether or not animalistic or divine in intelligence, I don't know. But it's real. And that's one thing real quick is I will say about Steven Greer is that he draws a lot of flack for being, quite gung-ho on his positions on stuff, and he draws a lot of flack for monetizing to a certain extent this idea that I'm discussing right now, because he brings people out on expeditions. One thing I will say about that is it is to a degree a filtration system, so that you don't just get every jackass coming out going, I want to see aliens, and not really respecting it. So you've got people that are, actually willing to pay a price to go out and do this, and I understand that. I wouldn't personally make a money scheme out of it, so I do have an issue with that, but it's real. It's real. So that's kind of like, that's where I'd go. Greer is correct,
Do you think as well, because I suppose this is where this cross-pollination with the lost history stuff, do you think this is why our ancients had such a vast understanding with astrology and the night sky? Do you think it was because we talked about the distractions we've got here in the West? Well, they didn't really have those, did they? No. They had the night sky, they had the world around them.
They had fresh perspectives.
Yeah, and I just feel as though we have this people label them as hunter-gatherers, but I think, okay, maybe they did hunt, maybe they did gather, but I'd wager they had a wealth of intellect, probably greater than what we've got now.
Well, I mean, proofs in the architecture, right? Like things we find across the world. Again, Baalbek trilithons or Göbekli Tepe or Sacsayhuaman, all these areas. The chronology has changed depending on who you speak to, but some of these things are really deep into the ancient past. Göbekli Tepe, of course, being like chief among them. This is hunter-gatherer like time period, and
we had a guy called Hugh Newman, and I don't know, you've crossed paths, I'm sure. He went He went in on Göbekli Tepe, and drawn out a load of information on that, where he believes that it was kind of used as a ritual, particularly with sound as well. He articulates it better than I'm doing here. What's your kind of, because you've been all these places, Jay.
Well, I haven't been Göbekli Tepe.
Oh, you've never been?
No, Turkey's on my list maybe this year.
But you've been everywhere else.
I've been to a few places, but there's so many places to go, man. Like, Nan Madol as well. I want to go to Nan Madol in Micronesia. That's the one with the huge basalt columns. That place looks nuts. Like the acoustic engineering or the psychoacoustic
engineering's a better. You've phrased it better than me.
Well, there is a literal category called psychoacoustic engineering or archaeoacoustic architecture, architecture that has specifically been created to in some way influence and manipulate sound. And there's a lot of evidence for that in the ancient past. And weirdly enough, like a kind of unnerving evidence for it in the Neolithic, in the kind of like the ancient temple building, stone building. A lot of that in Malta, the Hypogeum in Malta, Newgrange in Ireland.
I want to pick your brain on Malta. We'll obviously I'll let you carry on with that, only because I know very little about it. So this will be an education.
Well, I'm still learning.
Piece.
Like, I'm out there hanging with the Maltese locals, kind of listening to what they think about their own country. Because there's been so many cross tracks of history around that island. But the acoustic engineering is represented worldwide. I mean, Chavan de Huanta in Peru, thousands and thousands of years old, like way before the Inca, acoustically engineered to produce infrasound and, actually ritualistically changes the state of mind. And this is, again, something you see in the Hypogeum in Malta, which is one of the wildest places you could go. Very restricted in terms of you can't film, you can't take any audio, you can't, they lock everything up like it's like a government skiff.
They give a justification as to why, or is it just
incredibly delicate ecosystem because it's Neolithic, no flashes, no sounds, just bullshit basically. But it's an incredible subterranean carved out. We say temple because it's kind of like we run out of words to use for these things, so we say sacred site or temple. We don't really truly know what it was. But this place has been meticulously acoustically engineered to produce a 110 hertz bandwidth that very directly influences the human brain. Again, these aren't woo-woo statements like sound. Put some headphones on, put your favorite music on. Your emotions will change. Your emotion. We know that anyway, but there are also fundamental frequencies that can literally shift the brainwave function of your mind. So beta, alpha, theta, gamma, these are different states of brainwave function. And so theta is kind of like a more meditative, kind of hypnagogic state of consciousness. And that's usually induced around the 110 hertz bandwidth. So these places that sit between around about 109 to 115 hertz, you've got like the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, you've got the Hyper Gym, you've got Shavantaquanta, New Grange and Ireland. Even Stonehenge has very interesting acoustic properties, even though it's not a fully internal space. So there is definitely evidence for this. Is actually one of the things I think is the most interesting, is like acoustic, ritual acoustics, using acoustic spaces ritualistically for the expansion of consciousness, for the expansion of mind. And I would say that, you know, going back to what we were discussing about, these people were far purer in mind than we are with all of our modern pollution. I wouldn't be shocked at all to discover that they were seeing things like I saw and more, and having maybe even real interactions with things previously, because it's a completely different set of consciousness. And it would seem, based on the fact that they were doing all of these different acoustic engineering projects, that they weren't just aware of these abilities of the human toolkit, but were capitalizing on them, and we're actually trying to cultivate these toolkits. So it's a completely different consciousness. And if this was pre-Younger Dryas, then perhaps a cataclysm just completely smashed that out of our mind. Survival of the fittest, competition, ego, and voila, we have the world that we have today, right? Completely different set of values and kind of collective perception. But yes, I think that the acoustics play a strong role. Maybe even in manipulation of materials, like the Tibetan horns and like the raising of blocks. There's some, you know, stories about that. So there's a lot to say about acoustics, not just on the consciousness side of things, certainly represented in the ancient world, but also as a possible technological avenue that's been disregarded and maybe misunderstood in the modern era.
I think joining the dots, you know, that would explain if they were having these sort of experiences with the night sky, with the Earth's surroundings. You could understand how people would come to the conclusion that that's a deity, that's a god, and the fact that the ancients had pantheons of gods rather than single. That would explain why the Greeks had Apollo, why the Romans had Jupiter. It would explain why they have a justification to articulate what they believe to be a deity. It is truly fascinating.
Like I said, you lift the lid on the government. They all believe it. They all believe that the old gods are real and coming back.
I mean, I know you speak about this at length, and I'm quite fascinated on the whole Book of Enoch stuff, and the fact that it's not considered biblical canon.
Well, it was what is apocrypha. So it was like at one point in the canon, and then I think maybe around like the time of the I used to know the name of it. There was that famous meeting where they got rid of a bunch of stuff back in like ancient Rome, and they were like, right, get rid of that. Giants, Watchers, Nephilim, nah.
Yeah, they won't buy that. We've got to leave that stuff.
Council of Nicaea.
That's the Council of
Nicaea. So I think that at one point it was considered, part of the sacred text, and then it split off, but. The Apocrypha is some of the most interesting stuff to read. Not that I've read it all, but it's certainly a bit more sci-fi.
No, I mean the whole Book of Enoch stuff. It fascinates me. With the Watchers, and then obviously
and the fact that Baalbek's like just down the road from where the Watchers landed.
I mean, what's your take on the whole giant stuff? Because that ties in with the Book of Enoch.
We talked about that last time.
We did.
We did discuss it last time, and pretty much give you the same answer. It keeps popping up.
Yeah,
it keeps popping up in ancient mythology, and it pops up in contemporary stories about cover-ups by the Smithsonian and things like this. And then you go to places like Baalbek, and you see these giant doorways as well, and huge steps in Peru. And I'm open to it, but it would be nice to see some bones.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing, isn't it? But then
can't be 100%.
I think it might have been your interview with Rogan where you discussed this as well. Quite a vast majority of things don't get fossilized.
No,
if you find a fossil, you're extremely lucky to do that.
Yeah.
So if there were these giants that weren't necessarily in large numbers, then who's to say that they didn't just get eaten up by the earth?
Some of the legends they're in the Native American burial mounds, right? Like these big burial mounds out in America that, they're supposed to be giant bones within them, but you're not allowed to touch them and excavate them. So you'll never know because it's protected land. So, they did find some weird stuff in those tombs. Like, do you remember, I don't know which burial mound it was, but you remember they found in these coconut husk, I think it was, blankets, these copper sheets with incredibly precise geometric designs on them, because it's very striking images.
It's quite niche,
it should come
Yeah.
up. You'll see these like very striking copper sheets with geometrics and what look like almost eyeballs or flying objects or something like that. But you know, there's some mysterious things in these mounds, but we're not allowed to, you know,
it's
not allowed to have a butcher's.
where you're not allowed access or entry always rings alarm bells.
Same with the Grand Canyon, because there's vast regions of the Grand Canyon that are fully, you know, blocked off from the public, and you got to wonder about that. Yeah, giants, I don't know, man. Like, again, just all these different stories, and I do think it's very interesting that the Bible mentions them. And
yeah. Well, that's another thing with the whole, you know, taking the Book of Enoch out of it is it's still heavily referenced in the Bible.
Well,
and
now
the
you've got people like Anna Paulina Luna, like, you know, some of the people out in the American Congress going like, you know, read the Book of Enoch and the Watchers, and everyone's like, oh my God, like, you know, they're definitely playing to the crowd on these types of topics right now in terms of like, you know, how these books are adjacent to the UFO conversation. You know, what is the
how
truth
you
of
talk
the
about fallen angels.
Exactly,
you couldn't be alluding to anything more than the UFO stuff. We'll circle back to some lost history in a moment, but you've referenced him a few times there, Steven Greer. So just for a bit of context for the listeners, Steven Greer, what's his credentials and how did he get into this space? And you interviewed him as well, didn't you?
I did. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He was a medical doctor. I think he was a dean of medicine at one point. From not Alabama or Arkansas, from I don't know, Carolina maybe. But that's kind of like one of his
a cowboy country.
It's kind of one of his sticks, though. He's like, I'm just a country doctor from, you know, blah 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, okay, all right. He's got a big ego, but in all honesty, he's been in this game for decades, man. Like,
how old is he now? Because he seemed pretty.
I think he's like, I mean, he's jacked. He's
crazy.
Yeah,
he looks after himself.
He works out a lot, like, you know. But he's like definitely pushing, I think, into the 70s now.
Oh wow,
like, you know, into the upper 60s. I believe. Sorry if that's not true, but I think he's getting on now. But he's been active for, you know, decades and pushing this and doing a lot of really good work. He does. I don't agree with everything. He definitely does like to put the idea that these are all peaceful, that all of the interactions are peaceful, and that really the only way that an intelligent civilization could get to interstellar or dimensional travel is through figuring out and solving their internal conflicts and problems. And I don't fully agree with that. I think there are, you know, a few different avenues through which I think we're kind of proving that with our own black projects and classified projects, all in the name of national security and violence and death. And that's where most of the technological innovation is taking place, right? So, you know, if there is a secret space program that's utilizing novel propulsion systems, what you think that they're just pacifists? So I don't fully agree with that perspective that he puts out there, that this is all peaceful. And a lot of people would say that you shouldn't be doing the CE5 stuff, that you shouldn't be doing this kind of consciousness contact. There's some interesting crossovers, I think, from the religious communities when it comes to that kind of stuff, in terms of like, you are summoning demons. End of. Like,
well, I think
nothing positive to be drawn.
The take is there's always going to be yin with yang. There's always going to be good with evil.
Yeah.
And for someone to just out and out say that these things are peaceful, that does strike alarm bells.
I don't like any like full polarity, you know, position, you know, of like this is it, flag in the say, no nuance, especially with something so kind of like ineffable as like the vast cornucopia of potential intelligent life in the universe. I mean, like, let's not just like, you know, say it's all 100% definitely going to be peaceful. So I don't agree with him on that. I will fight his corner because I've had experiences with orbs. I know CE5 is real. I know that the human body is capable of getting into these states of excited bioenergetic output that in some way, for some reason, is responded to by something. I don't know why, but it's true. And it does seem to be higher states of consciousness, and I mean positive thinking.
Have you done much reading on Robert Monroe and the
like Loosh, you know, like maybe right. Those plasma beings, like I said, might have just been nibbling on my electromagnetic field. So that's kind of, you know, looshing it up, right? Like, they just get a little bit of that loosh, and then
coin that phrase, Jay.
Loosh it up, baby. That could be a t-shirt. But no, I mean, like, you know, Greer has, like any human being, his faults, right? Like me, I have my faults. And so I try not to like tarnish a dude with one brush just because he's quite outspoken on certain things, but he's done a lot of research. He was, you see, it's one of these kind of issues where some people would see these connections as evidence of him being controlled opposition, and then others would just see it as being evidence of him working hard and kind of gaining contacts. But he was like, briefing the CIA director, James Woolsey, and meeting with the Clintons at the Rockefeller Foundation. And he was bringing people like the Obamas, briefing slides on disclosure back in the day and stuff. So he's really been pushing an attempt at UFO disclosure through the government for a long time. But what I find interesting about Steven Greer, especially in contrast to what we see now with people like Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and all of these guys, is that Greer was offering a very different narrative to what we're being offered now. And Greer was offering a narrative that was saying that there is a criminal cover-up that has been taking place for almost 100 years, technological acquisition, hiding advancements from the general population, suppressing our evolution essentially through the stagnation of propulsion and energy all going into the classified world. That's not very good, is it? If you're a part of the architecture of national security and there's a guy out there that happens to be getting, multi-million Netflix documentaries that are going to #1 for months, which it was, unacknowledged was at the top of the list. So, for quite a while, I think Greer was a very problematic person for whoever's in the deeper elements of the national security state that have answers on these things and don't want to audit from the Pentagon coming their way. So it is interesting that a lot of the people that were originally on Greer's team moved over to Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon's kind of side of things. And again, all of this came through Blink-182 singer and rock star Tom DeLonge. So Tom DeLonge, to give people an idea of this, going way back, this is now 2015, 2016, he went to a family and friends meet and greet at Lockheed Martin, the spearhead tier 1 defense contractor of the US government, as you do as a rock star, just to go say hello. He knew people in there. Someone had told him, we're having a family and friends meet and greet. Would you like to come and introduce the bosses onto the stage? And he apparently, this is in a podcast, said, I will, but I want 10 minutes with your bosses afterwards. And they were like, okay. And so he does the stage thing and then he goes off and he describes being, led down corridors, playing white noise and all these different security measures until he ends up in this office with the guys from Lockheed Martin, from the Skunk Works, which is their most classified experimental propulsion lab, which is where a lot of the people would say that the anti-gravity stuff and the alien reverse engineering is coming out of Lockheed Martin, but it's coming out of Skunk Works, the kind of basement level of Lockheed Martin. And so he's in the room with all these guys and he pitches to the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. You familiar with that?
No.
Yeah, so this kind of was a blip on the radar of the UFO thing. And so I think most people who have heard the Navy pilots talk on CNN and have heard the Congress probably don't know about To the Stars Academy. But To the Stars Academy was the initial kind of jumping off point for everything else to happen. So he presents this template to the directors of Lockheed Martin saying, look, I know that you guys know about UFOs. I know that there's things that need to be discussed, but I want to try and help. And I want to be, he said this, of service to you and be kind of the node, the influence into the public. And so if you look at it from the perspective of these guys in this national security architecture, there's Steven Greer out there literally saying that we need to arrest these people for illegal programs. And how do you combat that when you don't even have a real name? You're a spook. You're super underground. You can't combat someone who's out there unless you actually, combat them, which was maybe a possibility. And then suddenly in walks a rock star.
So goes, he was trying to be a bit of a, we call them influencers these days, don't they?
He wanted
disclosure influencer.
He wanted to be the disclosure influencer. But instead of having executive control over what was happening, he basically just went into the belly of the beast, into the actual lion's den and was like, hey, do what you want. I'm just the face. And it was fantastic because, Greer is out there doing this. And then bam, To the Stars Academy gets created, which is this kind of company that's going to be representing all the UFO disclosure stuff, and Lou Elizondo was on it and Christopher Mellon was on it and Gary Nolan was on it. All of the guys that are in this now new conversation through government were a part of TTSA. We'll just call it that because that's what they called it, TTSA. It flopped around COVID and just kind of fell apart. But this was kind of the initial grouping, and they poached people from Greer's team, people that were on Greer's team went over to TTSA. And TTSA offered a very different narrative to what Greer was offering. And because it was a bunch of, government representatives coming out, people were like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's the truth of it then. Lou Elizondo and all these guys who are saying, UFOs are real, but we have no idea what they are. Like, we just don't know. Yes, we agree they're real, but it's a mystery. And that's where I think the bullshit comes in, because it's not a mystery to some of these people. They do have knowledge. They do have intelligence that's been gathered over decades from observation and perhaps even from some form of retrieval.
Is that like the variation of like a sleight of hand technique?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to say it's real.
Yes.
This is going on over here.
We're going to say it's real, but we're not going to say we've developed experimental technologies for 70 years, like, off of the back of retrieving things and, working it out over time. And I still don't know where I sit on the alien retrieval narrative, because I actually do think we've made exponential breakthroughs in energy and propulsion, completely absent any sort of requirement for a Roswell recovery or any sort of alien recovery. All you've got to do is look at the chronology of people like T. Townsend Brown, Nikola Tesla, these high energy physicists who were absorbed into the national security state, and very clearly their work was then obfuscated and classified into the kind of the deeper trenches of experimental programs. This is like before the Cold War. This is like way back. So there is absolutely an evidential trail for high energy physics, plasma physics, gravity physics being classified. I mean, in the 1950s, it was genuinely the consensus in modern mainstream physics that gravity propulsion was going to be the next thing. It was just believed logically this would be the next step. And it just never happened. And that's because it did happen in the classified world, in my opinion. I think they absolutely cracked field propulsion, forms of using electrogravitics to eliminate mass or reduce mass in an object. And they probably did this off of the back of people like T. Townsend Brown and people like Nikola Tesla. And the alien narrative is quite kind of useful for that, because you can just kind of put out there the idea through Hollywood and through disclosure, through these kind of like agents that are inserted, that it can't be human. It's not part of our arsenal. No way. The Russians don't have this and neither do we. So, must be alien. And so when someone sees a black triangle that does a right angle turn at 900 miles per hour, they go, well, that's an alien vehicle that I've seen. And I think that in of itself is a very useful smokescreen for the black world, for the clandestine world, for putting, experimental prototypes out there, and no one has to know. It's an alien vehicle. If you see it move like that, it's alien by default. So they are encouraging that type of model and that type of narrative by saying, we as the government don't know what this is. We acknowledge and we agree with you. There are UFOs. That's not a question anymore. And everyone's like salivating, like, oh my God, the government's disclosed it. Isn't the UFOs are a thing.
Well, it's like the Barack Obama video that went viral.
Oh my, that annoyed with the recent one.
Yeah.
That annoyed the hell out of me, because I think that guy was a plant. Like that, you don't have, like, Obama gave that guy 2 additional ins to ask more about that.
I don't know who that guy is. I mean, I've never come. I only seen the clip.
Suspicious.
But yeah, I mean, anyone has the opportunity to interview a former president of the United States who then proceeds to say aliens are real, and there is no follow up to that.
None.
You don't even have to be a huge podcaster to have that. Just general conversation.
No, that's why it got me annoyed, because I think that
and then, of course, Trump fanned the flames for the whole.
Well, people started saying that, because Trump didn't. Obviously, Trump didn't even know what Obama had said.
No.
The fact that he was like, well, he said classified information, and it's like, oh, so wait a minute, like,
but why are people taking?
Why
are people still not taking throwaway comments by Trump with a pinch of salt?
Exactly right.
The guy's
throwaway comments from every politician with a pinch of salt, and especially with Trump. But it's like, especially with UFO disclosure, because he knows it's a hot ticket.
Yeah,
he'll just play that number because he knows it's a hot ticket with his base. But again, a lot of these American politicians are doing that. All due respect to them. I've interviewed quite a few of them. Like Congressman Tim Burchett, I've had him on a number of times, and I was actually the first to get him on for an
How
interview.
do you find when you're chatting with politicians? Because from my experience with them, they're all just a bit odd.
They are odd. Like, Burchett's hilarious. He's got so many of those like Southern phrases, like those brilliant like old-timey Southern phrases, because he kind of talks like that, like, that's Tim Burchett.
Matthew McConaughey type vibes.
He's got that real folksy wisdom kind of thing. So he's quite funny, It was like, what did he say? He's like, in Congress, like, they couldn't get water out of a boot. The instructions were written on the heel. I was just like, what is this?
Just vocabulary of the most peculiar order.
My God. But these guys, like, with all due respect, they're politicians. They're playing their number. They're playing to their base. And they know that a lot of people are really interested in UFOs. And so I see it on X, like, kind of like, they're hyping people up over the things that are being said to them, potentially in SCIFs. If for someone who doesn't know what a SCIF is, that's a secure, compartmented information facility. It's a underground Faraday cage where no electronics can penetrate and classify conversations I had inside them. So whenever these, politicians are like, I just got out of the skiff and I've heard things that I'm never going to sleep again. It's just like, they're just hyping you up, man. Like, I don't really believe a lot of it. I think you have to be guarded against this modern disclosure thing in terms of like expecting too much from it, because I've been involved for a number of years thinking, wow, TTSA, 2 to Stars Academy, Lou Elizondo, like the New York Times is coming out with things. This is all going to, this was 2017, bro. That's almost a decade ago. Like, people forget. That's almost a decade ago.
I think with the internet and social media, people have so much content fatigue now. They forget, but that opens the floodgates for situations like this where they can just regurgitate the same things.
The cycle just keeps spinning, and it's kind of like the missing scientist thing, because there is like an actual...
I want to ask you about that, but why you brought it up, mate?
Well, there's a pattern. There is certainly some form of pattern, and there's a core group of people that do have a lot of connections to each other. If you bring up a kind of spider map of all of the different institutions and their particular connections to each other and the institutions, I mean, my God, they're overlapping everywhere. General McCasland and these various like NASA plasma physicists and scientists. There's like an element of a pattern here. But then the media, is picked up on this. It's like every scientist who dies now is just part of the pattern. It's like another, the 14th scientist.
It's like the media, they realise that a lot of conspiracy theories are now coming more recognisable and more credible.
It's
so
just
like,
clicks.
we need a bit of this. Let's latch on the missing scientists.
It's fully clicks. That's what it is. Like, they're just whoring themselves out on like the kind of like the least tangible piece of information. Another scientist dies. Well, bam, throw that into the pattern. So it's kind of like a really difficult time to navigate the information space and alternative information, especially on UFOs and these kind of conversations, because the media is playing its role in just kind of like making it into noise. But there is a signal underneath that should be paid attention to. But you've got to battle through not just the mainstream misinterpreting and spinning, but also like, genuine disinformation agents like Lou Elizondo, who I would consider to be an actual disinformation agent.
You went in on him on
I did,
Rogan.
Yeah, because he deserves it, he deserves it.
He didn't, even though I'm not, when I first come across him, the interview, he just didn't hold me interest. He come across too corporate.
Yeah.
And anyone who's too corporate when they're supposed to be, quote, whistleblowing, then it doesn't wash with me.
Well, he hasn't blown a whistle on anything. And like, who gets fast? I mean, for example, this is something that I did bring up a thing with Joe, is like, you look at someone like Edward Snowden or Julian Assange, who revealed, even, especially if we're talking about UFOs, they revealed conventional national security secrets, right? UFOs is like deep, super classified. So it's even more than what Edward Snowden and Julian Assange were revealing. But Lou Elizondo can do that, resign with dignity from his government position, and then go over to the New York Times and tell his story and sell it and go on international tours and receive no blowback. And it just strikes me as a little odd.
When you're getting that kind of access to things that no one has access to,
and there's no repercussions from the actual like people that you're blowing the whistle on.
He was doing the rounds, like he was. I know the algorithm sort of focuses on what you've recently looked at, but like, I was seeing him on. He was doing Rogan, he did Bartlett, he was going on all. It was like he was on tour, really.
Yeah, that was like maybe like 6 months, like last year or so. He's lost a lot of popularity, and again with good reason.
Because of the Rogan interview.
I think I might have certainly pushed people into a certain
You weren't
position.
feeling nervous at that point, that's for sure.
I wasn't. You know what? I think it was just the fact that like I know Joe still like is a little bit listening to these guys, and I just kind of wanted to be like, no. But also I listened back to it and I was like, oh shit.
It was good. No, I enjoyed it.
You know what it was more than anything?
I'm sure you got a lot of backlash.
I don't regret what I said whatsoever. But there's just this one moment where my face dropped so heavily. I was just like, oh, damn, you were not masking your emotions at all. Because he was like, well, they know stuff. And I was just like, what do they know?
Yeah,
my face just dropped.
And even Rogan he just sort of, I'm going to have to laugh or crack a joke here.
For real, right? Because he just got real serious with it. But no, again, I feel like these people have come in to disrupt the ecosystem of the community, and there's so much warring and in war fighting now between these two opposing groups. But I would say that a lot of people are beginning to become suspicious of these guys, not just because like they haven't really yielded the fruit that we've all been hoping would happen, and it's been year after year after year, but someone like Lou, and again, I said this on Joe, he has presented multiple fake images to the public. Multiple.
Yes, and they've been debunked. Yeah,
on stage and in a congressional setting, which is just mad to me. And his excuse was like he was just handed the image before he went on.
Did he lose a lot of momentum when he did that?
Yeah,
or did he still?
Well, what's weird is he's got this core group that just kind of seem to not care if anything is weird about Lou.
So the only way, let's use, like, I know it's a completely different subject, but Graham Hancock, if he makes one factual error, they're on him. That gravy train stopped. So I was just a bit curious for someone who made huge amounts of errors.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. Like, it splintered off. It splintered off into people like me and my other researcher friends who were noticing these errors and going, guys, like, we need to start questioning this dude a bit instead of just blindly believing him. Versus at that point, like a few years back now, a majority consensus of no, Lou's helping push this forward and doing really necessary work, shut up. So, you know, that was the vibe for a while, and I kind of fell out of favor with a lot of people in the UFO world because of that, because of my position on it. But people have started to gradually over time get to this point that I've been at for a while. And again, it is these things like the images, like that was a big one. Like, he still got his acolytes for sure, like people that will just like tooth and nail defend him. But this lost him a lot of people because, like, how can you go up in a congressional setting? Like, that's the biggest one. There's been a few instances, like I said, on stage at a UFO conference. But, you know, holding up an image of fields, literally, it was two circular fields next to each other that gave the perspective of a UFO hovering with its circular shadow playing on the floor below it. But in actuality, it was just a light circle field and a dark circle field next to each other. Optical illusion, fully proved. Undeniable. They found the location and he had to retract it. It's just like, how is a guy like this? I mean, it's kind of weird because obviously if he is a disinformation agent pushing a narrative, like, bloody hell, you're not helping yourself when you
pretty flawed.
Kneecap yourself publicly like this. So maybe he's just stupid. I don't know. But like, you know, either way, it's not good. It's not conducive to an actual disclosure, and discussing it shouldn't make you a hater of disclosure or an anti, you know, UFO guy. Like, a skeptic. I'm still an experiencer of some form of UFO phenomena. I'm very interested in the subject. I would still talk about it, but, you know, blindly trusting the government on something like this, like an asset from the government, a counterintelligence agent who ran black sites at Guantanamo Bay, like, what? What kind of world have we come to?
It doesn't quite add up.
When we can't challenge the moral compass of an individual such as this.
I mean, I mean, ever since, as cliche as it is to say now, ever since COVID, I just don't trust the mainstream on anything. I'm always skeptical, and even when they bring receipts, I still want them reassessed.
Yeah,
just to kind of, because obviously he's reached a bit more prominence since his documentary came out. What's your take on Bob Lazar and his story?
Yeah, Bob's an interesting one. I don't know, man. Like, the thing with
Bob, because he's very, I suppose in a way, he's a bit Marmite, like
he's a bit
Vegemite.
Yeah, he's a bit. I will admit, I've never done like a full research deep dive. I've listened to quite a few opinions on both sides, and, you know, there's evidence that he was in some way brought in. I wonder if maybe he was purposely misinformed. I wonder if maybe he was brought into something as a kind of disinformation ploy on the public.
Because he seems pretty genuine from the interviews I preferred his second interview, but that might be, I'm not a huge fan of, who's the first documentary did, Jeremy
Corbell.
Yeah, I'm not a huge, I don't know the guy. I just.
He's got a new documentary out.
Oh, okay.
Sleeping Dogs. Right. It's a documentary about Jeremy Corbell. It's Jeremy Corbell featuring Jeremy Corbell about Jeremy Corbell. Okay. Did I mention it's Jeremy Corbell? Like, yeah. So yeah, he's very.
Would I not watch it?
He's very, very into himself. That's for sure. I mean, the Bob Lazar documentary was mainly him. It was mainly him in a bathroom and stuff.
Obviously, it's Rogan's biggest episode, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of come away from that. Granted, I knew I still don't know that much about the whole UFO stuff, but back then I knew even less. And I come away from that interview just thinking, I don't know if I buy this.
Yeah.
But then the second one, let's say Bob won me over.
Bob's got a checkered past. He was running a brothel for a while.
Yeah.
He was linked up to some like neo-Nazi biker gang. Like, there's some weird elements of his past, and I just don't know how I feel.
What's
about
the general
him.
concern? Because you've mixed in these circles,
like
with Jesse Michaels and all that.
Legit,
now.
like you know, he's legit, but that also serves the. I don't give a fuck. Like it serves the purpose of being a podcaster in the UFO world to believe in Bob Lazar. Like I don't care. Like I don't really trust anyone in ufology anymore.
You've reached that point.
Yeah, I'm kind of at that point of really struggling to trust anyone, including myself. Like, I'm just like, I don't even know if I believe the right things anymore, you know? But I do think that he was exposed to something at Los Alamos. I do think that he was in some way actually introduced to that world. But I think that he might have been actually fed a lot of bunk information, and he has as much as people like to say that he stuck to his story the whole time. There have been changes in his story, like viewing it outside or viewing it in a hangar, being underneath it or not being underneath, like little things like this. It's like there are slips in his memory, and he does have an individual that comes with him. This has been revealed actually by some researcher. Oh, goodness, I'm sorry, John something, Dean Johnson, I think. He's been on Bob Lazar like a bad rash for years trying to dig up things. But he found that he has a coacher that comes with him to speak, to kind of like go through his story before he goes on stage, like to kind of refresh all the memory and stuff. So like, I don't know.
He's very, very protected in that sense.
He's very protected. He's very protected. He's very protected. And I think he doesn't do podcasts unless there's a certain price attached to it. You know,
well,
but
do you know who I got a thing with this? George St. Pierre, UFC fighter. He come up with a conclusion, obviously with Bob Lazar. Now he's a big fan of Bob. I think he's doing his own podcast soon, and I know Bob's going to be a guest. But he kind of referenced MK Ultra, like some not MK Ultra, but there was some sort of experiment that maybe Bob was subject to, and they, similar to what you're saying, they convinced him that this stuff was real. Because JSP said that he believes that Bob believes what he's saying is accurate.
Yeah, I could imagine that. That's why I'm saying I think he might have got messed with. Yeah, they might have messed with him, sent him out into the wild to start spreading certain, positions and certain ideas. But it's murky. It's murky. The whole reverse engineering and building of vehicles thing is murky. Like I said, I wonder if a lot of it is a smokescreen for our own technology, that we're just using this alien kind of blanket to make it.
Common thread, that, isn't it? Yeah, it seems to be.
Yeah, I do think that there's a good likelihood we've made these advancements. Propulsion and energy have just barely advanced, like barely. We're still flying around in essentially the same airframe as a Wright brothers invention. It's not changed drastically.
When so many other things are advancing.
Slightly bigger engines, whereas, we've got quantum computers and virtual. I know that there's obviously there is a developmental kind of threshold with propulsion and energy. It's a different kind of ball game, but nah, you can't tell me we've gone this far and it hasn't advanced. Like, they've definitely got plasma fusion and nuclear fusion going on in ways that we don't know about. There's been a lot of different plasma-based kind of grassroots groups that have come up and then just vanished. Like the Sapphire Project, that was an interesting project. The Sapphire Project looking at bottling the stars, coming with all these exotic plasma experimentations in vacuum chambers. And Hal Puthoff, who was a member of To the Stars Academy, got involved with that group and then vanished off the face of the earth. Yeah, it's weird how that happens.
So sort of, the UFO thing, you kind of don't really have much interest in what people say now. But I suppose one thing that I think we can mutually agree we have a lot of interest in, Egypt in particular. Before I ask you about the whole Filippo Bionde stuff and the recent alleged discovery, what's your take on, because I always bought into the Christopher Dunn thought process. I know you're going to have to link me in with this guy, Jeffrey Drum. Yeah, because I find his stuff fascinating. But yeah, for years, I've always been a massive, stuff Graham Hancock said. But Christopher Dunn, when I read the Giza Powerplant, have you read that?
No, not in fact. I've gone through it.
Yeah, I was just like, this is a power plant, and I'm not believing anything differently. But then more and more things have come to light where I kind of think, you mentioned there with the acoustic technology, I sort of think, maybe there's elements of the power plant in this. Well, and then when the land of Chem comes, and I'm like, I'm now lost again with
this. This is the thing. And I think that with Egypt especially, it's probably better to not look at it through, again, a polarizing lens. Is it scientific? Is it spiritual? It might be science and spirit. And I think it probably is. I think that there's probably alchemical levels of this pyramid. There's probably very industrial levels of this pyramid, acoustics playing some form of a role. The acoustics could even be some form of industrial process. We don't know if it's ritualistic, but I just think that especially with places like Egypt, you have a coupling, even with the dynastic period, of science and spirit, of the alchemy. And so I am very open to this being something that we can't fully describe within our perspective of technology, because it's not our kind of technology, especially if there really is these huge structures beneath. Because if that's there, it changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah,
I mean, there's more below than there is above. So then you have to take all of that into consideration for any model. If you've built a factory already with the pyramid and then all of that's below, well, okay, so the factory is 10%. What's all of that?
That's like Göbekli Tepe 2.0 in terms of a monkey wrench.
Yeah, it's a problem. So, and the only way we can evidence it is with excavation. Who knows if that will happen?
Which, I don't know if Zahi
they need more
Hawass
scans.
still.
I want to see them scanning more.
I mean, I'm sort of someone else, sort of going back onto that. When you look at sort of like an artist interpretation of, let's say, a pyramid sliced in half, where you've got the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, it does look almost, for lack of a better phrasing, alien, as though that is a machine.
Yeah, it
weird. Doesn't look like something that the blueprint for something that's
not at all. And especially again, like
Egyptian.
It's a almost tired comparison, but it's worth making. Is that there's just no hieroglyphs in the pyramids? It's completely bare. It looks mechanical.
Well, you've been in them multiple times, haven't you? So everyone describes it to me as a sort of like entering a spaceship of some capacity.
Like a big megalithic space, like something like Prometheus. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing in there that is in any way reverence or spirit or the journey of the soul, or, things that these people depicted in their iconography all the time. I mean, you go to the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens, completely different story. And it's not a square inch that isn't covered. So, the pyramids being completely bare, feeling like this mechanical, huge, colossal structure. And then with the implications of this potential structure below, I mean, there's no way that you can look at that as a simple tomb. It doesn't make any sense. It never made sense anyway. It's not a tomb, clearly. Is it a factory? I don't know. I do like Jeffrey Drum's ideas. I think Christopher Dunn is fantastic. I think they're probably the closest out of, all of the various ideas around the pyramids. But
we're hoping to, a bit of an exclusive, we're hoping to get Christopher Dunn on the show. We're in talks.
Great. That's great.
Obviously, he's getting on a bit now, isn't he? So,
would that be flying him out? Or
I think it'll be when I'm next in the States.
When you're in the States, yeah.
But no, I'm really fascinated with Jeffrey Drum's work. So, but it's just such a mystery, Egypt. I mean, obviously, we could probably do another 3 hours just on the pyramids alone. But what's your take on this new this alleged second Sphinx? Obviously, I think for context, let people know your connection with Filippo Bondi.
I got linked up with Filippo quite early on. I was fortunate, really, because my video went kind of viral.
That was your first appearance on Rogan, wasn't it?
Yeah. That when they played my video, him and Chris Williamson, which was just like, oh my God.
Two biggest podcasters in the world talking about you.
I made a couple of errors in that video. I made it really fast because I found out about this information.
You was excited,
I was excited. I think what it was, I think I said it was the Khufu pyramid instead of Khafre or something stupid like that.
But they strung you up for that, no doubt.
Well, someone did. I know someone did. But I did that video and I got connected to the Khafre pyramid team internally in the back channels through emails and started speaking with Filippo. And then I did the first interview of them.
Great interview, by the way.
Thank you.
Did well.
Yeah, got that interview done. That was quite early on. This is before the hype of it, really, people knew about it. Obviously, like Jesse Michaels did a great one with Filippo, and I think that's kind of like the main one people are seeing. Mine was like maybe like a year prior.
I've not watched it, but did he go on Rogan as well, Filippo?
He went on Rogan. He messaged me like, "Oh, Jay, I got on Rogan." I was like, "Yes, Filippo." So he's a great guy. He's honestly like one of the kindest souls you'll ever meet. Really fun to be around. Good guy, very intelligent. Clearly knows his stuff when it comes to radar, when it comes to this very niche discipline that he's landed in. Has his background with the Italian government. Doesn't talk about it. Like, you're not going to get any information out of him when you press him on that. I tried, Jesse tried, I think Joe tried, and he just kind of will not go there. So, he's very sensible. He's an Italian academic. He's a little older. He's got his ways. He can be a little bit slow to kind of take advice on how to approach certain things, like using software, or he's got his own method. But I think that he's he's a good guy. He's a real guy. I don't see a scammer or a grifter
agenda or anything.
He could be wrong, but I don't think he's trying to fool anyone.
He's got too much to lose to put himself out there like this.
He's not been running the circuit of conferences for years trying to convince people of this. He came out of the blue. It's just like he obviously saw some legitimacy in this idea, and obviously like he's the one with the technology, the patent, the Beyond A protocol as they refer to it, the synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography. He's the one behind that. So really the Khafre Pyramid team is him with this technology and then people around him. But I don't think that he's trying to fool anyone. However, I don't agree with this 100%, 105%. I unequivocally know that there is a Sphinx below the Giza Plateau in this place. I don't agree with that. There have been problems with what this mound is. This mound has now been evidenced to not have been there for hundreds of years. It's, I think in the 1920s, it wasn't there. There's black and white photos where it wasn't there. And next to it is a necropolis. So you have that kind of evidence of a burial mound, like, dirt from the necropolis being put into a heap, a burial heap. So, I mean, we have to wait until this conference. There's a conference coming up. I was maybe going to go.
Couple of weeks,
I'll see, because I'm busy. I've got a lot happening next month. I would like to go to Bologna and be there. But we'll have to wait and see what they put out with the scans. But right now, I just think you can't say 100%. Like, you need to excavate. So that's where I would kind of, not agree with Filippo respectfully. I think we need to be a little bit more kind of cautious with how we're saying things, but that's his prerogative. If he feels so strong about it, he feels that strong. I did a video saying that there is absolutely like dual Sphinx iconography throughout Egypt and a lot of different examples of it. And it would conceptually make sense for this, Sphinx to be there. It'd be really interesting, as I said in the video I did, if they actually excavated and it was a lion. Because that's kind of the big discrepancy, right? Was it changed at some point into a Sphinx from a lion? So if they did any excavations and there was a lion underneath there, I think Graham Hancock would be like, you're like vindicated, right? But yeah, like in terms of, I feel like the Sphinx should be a side project. Okay, like, okay, there's a second Sphinx maybe on the Giza Plateau. Fantastic. We should find that at some point. There are huge spiraling columns below the pyramids, though.
Talk about sleight of hand.
Kind of feels like that's a bigger deal to me. So I feel like really, like from my perspective, I would say let's focus on doing more tomography of these structures, get better angles, get different angles, try and build a full spectrum model of what we're seeing, and try and convince the Egyptian government to, allow some form of, even if it's just very, surgical drilling or surgical excavation, but. Yeah, like I just kind of feel like the second Sphinx is of lesser importance than a potential substructural city scale, infrastructure below ground. So
I think with the second Sphinx, is there like an obelisk in front of the Sphinx that has a depiction of two lions, two Sphinxes? But I sort of come to, looking at sort of like the Hermeticism aspect. Everyone uses that phrase, as above, so below. Well, what if because I firmly buy into the Sphinx being originally a lion. Right. So what if you go off that, the correlation of Leo, as above, so below, that's your second Sphinx.
That's your second Sphinx. Yeah,
so I kind of think, don't look too much into this.
Yeah,
this
like it's
depiction.
possible, but let's not, side rail everything to go look for the Sphinx. I just feel like there's way more on the Giza Plateau.
Is there an update on the scans? Has there been any more developments? I don't know if you're in the loop or you have any exclusives for us.
I'm in the loop, but like I said, it seems to be about the Sphinx. And that's what I'm saying. It's like
a bit underwhelming, isn't it? Really,
it just feels like there should be more. I mean, I guess it's difficult and it takes more time to do the various scans required to build a model of what's underneath the pyramids. But yeah, I feel like that would be the time better spent for me personally. And the Sphinx is a kind of secondary project once we've really validated what's underneath the plateau. But yeah, it's going to be a slow one no matter what. No one, if anyone's waiting for immediate answers on what's beneath Giza, it's not going to happen.
I think with it's just whenever people talk, like use buzzwords, pyramids, Sphinx, Giza, Egypt, that gets the viral clips.
Course,
that's again, there's
People
always kind of like an agenda.
I want to know. Like everyone's
exactly.
excited,
Egypt's the bit. Even if you're not embedded in this space, like
no,
we
you don't
are,
need to be.
everyone knows about Egypt. Yeah, everyone wants to know. That what's the stories? Is it aliens? Is it Powerplant? Is it And all right, the Sphinx is cool and all, but I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a let's not lose sight of things.
What's beneath the first Sphinx? Like there's clearly stuff underneath there.
Well,
and it's like we were saying,
a mystery in itself.
Yeah, it's like we were saying off record about Zahi Hawass. Like he was saying that like back in the 90s.
On record, we both said it's the worst interview I think anyone's ever done.
Worst interview anyone's ever done. Also the best interview for the alternative world.
Yeah, of course.
Really helped us out there, Zahi, by looking like such an ass. But it was definitely not great for the conventional model of history and Egyptology. But he was he wasn't thinking this way in the 90s. And there was like this whole quote from him, like outside Cairo University, where he was saying, there are entrance ways under the Sphinx that lead even deeper into the pyramids, and once we explore those, we will truly know who built the pyramids. It's like, whoa, that's not a Zahi Hawass quote you'd expect to see, but then complete flip. And again, he came through the Edgar Cayce Foundation, Edgar Cayce being the famous mystic who said that the answers to Atlantis and the pre-Diluvian time would be revealed under the pore of the Sphinx. And so it's like, this guy came up through this mystic foundation. He had these ideas, and then around the 90s period, boom, complete change. And now he's who he is now. Yeah. So it makes you wonder.
He's clearly been brainwashed by the mainstream.
Brainwashed, bought out.
Even the name Zahi Hawass, I know it kind of has that stigma attached to it now, but if you didn't know who he was, quite a cool name, and you'd expect him to be a
Zahi
bit more.
Hawass. It sounds
you'd expect him to be a bit more. Outlandish,
I've excavated every piece of sand. Like, bro, like he was wild on that Joe Rogan. I've only ever seen the supercut. Someone did a brilliant supercut.
I watched the full thing.
Where it's just like my book, in my book. Wild.
I get like he's at that age where he's had to justify and defend himself, but you had an opportunity there. Joe's the truth seeker. He just wants to know. Joe would have given him a fair platform to outline
to have him on.
stuff.
Like at the beginning, he was like, "Dude, I'm so excited to have you on."
And then as the conversation went on, Joe was just like, this is a
about 15
waste
minutes
of my
in,
time.
You could see Joe Rogan's face was like, this isn't what
his soul leaves his body.
I wasn't expecting this. Yeah.
But stuff that's maybe not as well known for people outside of the alternative space. You've done a lot of stuff in Peru.
Yeah.
That's something I've always been fascinated with. Ben Van Kerkwick's stuff, your stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there with Peru that I just
sometimes
find
even more weird than Egypt.
Yeah.
In terms of the architecture, the stonework,
and I know you can say sexy woman. The stonework there is just incredible. I mean, it's how people talk about the pyramids being so perfectly placed together, but that stuff is
but it's the fact that it's you're dealing with like polygonal blocks with multiple angles, and they all fit together in this perfect mesh, and in a way that is kind of like, which one came first? Like, how did this begin? Because like each one fits into the other with sometimes up to 12 angles. Like there's a famous wall in Cusco City, which is this megalithic wall of Cyclopean stone. And there's one that's 12 angles. Like it's just absolutely ridiculous. And of course, each angle perfectly fits into the corresponding stone. What's weird about Peru as well is their god Viticulture, and you'll see statues of him everywhere. This proud man in this kind of headdress holding a staff. And I think I said this on Joe. The staff is a corn cob. It's a cob of corn. Saxa woman looks like a corn cob when you really think about it. It's
do you know what? Pull that up. That's if we've got to look at this. So I won't expect you to spell sexy woman. If you just put walls Peru, you should find that up. But go on while he's searching for that.
Yes.
So now you've said that.
Honestly, the more you look at it, you're like, well, it's interesting that their civilizer god that provided them with the tools of knowledge has this staff with this corn cob. Now, obviously, you could say that that's just a representation of agriculture.
Yeah. So the precision on this, it's just insane.
Tell me that's not corn cob like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got these pillowed out kind of connective tissue type of stones. And again,
that's a really good perspective to look at it, Jay, because I've never looked at it like that. Especially that one. So sort of like at the...
If you put a corn cob next
that's
to
the
it,
one.
Bring up a corn cob as well.
I mean, stuff like that is just...
exactly what I'm talking about. So I just, again, mirroring nature, potentially, scaling up. nature's own architecture to building scale. Perhaps, possibly, who knows? It's certainly
with
a
these
pattern.
these megalithic sites as well. Is like they're so precise. Obviously, Baalbek we spoke about as well, but they're so precise in the way they're put together. There's no way you could do that in one take.
No,
but yet there's no other, like, let's say, blueprints that we found. It just seems to be this.
Yeah, just completed. Yeah, well, I mean, in Peru, they have this strange tradition of these incredible multi-angled stones. And again, that's why I said it's sometimes more impressive than Egypt. Because you're just looking at these incredible, and it's andesite and diorite and granite. So again, you know, the Egyptians were using granite and diorite, so on the same level of hardness, but just this, you know, this multi-angle fitting. A lot of the Peruvians are convinced they were softening the stone. There's different stories about ways in which the ancients were softening the stone. And again, the mainstream historians will attribute places like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo in the Sacred Valley and all the various megalithic sites to the Inca. The Bronze Age Inca, 500 years ago, 600 years ago. And that makes no sense. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to go out to Peru, is that Peru especially, you have a very interesting juxtaposition quite literally in front of you at a lot of these megalithic sites where the mainstream is like, everything here is Inca. And it's like, okay, but you've got incredibly engineered multi-ton megalithic structures that have actually, you can see a lot of them. Sacsayhuaman's better preserved. Ollantaytambo is one of the best representations of this in the Sacred Valley. Completely destroyed. There's huge blocks of, like, we're talking, 20, 30, 50 ton red granite blocks that are just sliding down the hillside. You can see the surviving remains of a wall, and then the rest of it's just collapsed and crumbling. But then all around that area, you have completely perfect rough cut stone walls that use mortar, like these plateaus of agriculture, these farming plateaus, a bit like the rice paddies that you get. And they have that in Peru, and it was the Inca. Incredible. Like, they were incredible agricultural engineers, and they made these stepped farming plateaus. But it's all made out of this loose-fitting, mortar-using, rough-cut stone, and they've got structures all around this area. They're still standing. They're completely fine. They're completely untouched for the most part. Bit of wear and tear and crumble. But these megalithic, multi-ton precision-engineered structures are just completely decimated. So how you can say that the chronology, and again, the Inca were not around for a very long time before the Spanish came in, wrecked shop, and just deleted them basically from history, save a few different scraps of information. They basically destroyed the Inca. So the Inca didn't have the same breadth of time that the Egyptians had. Like, you can try and invoke slave labor with the Egyptians because they had such a huge amount of time to build dynasties and all of this. Again, it doesn't actually make sense really, but
it's more
you can attempt to
than,
invoke it because of the amount of time. They had a few hundred years, and in terms of their like civilizational apex, a couple of 100 years, 100 years, 90 years, basically. And so there's not much enough time for them to be erecting all these things. And also this damage discrepancy is huge, because how could these very simple rough cut stone walls survive what these megalithic walls didn't if they're happening at the exact same time period? Because what you're seeing on these walls is enough force that it must have decimated the area. I mean, we're talking earthquakes. It's not gunpowder. The conquistadors didn't have dynamite. It was before the time of dynamite. They only had gunpowder. So they didn't have huge kinetic explosive ordnance, all right? So what could have destroyed somewhere like Ollantaytambo? Sacsayhuaman is better preserved, but there's huge areas of that where the stone has collapsed down and been destroyed. Also, they're finding below the ground that these walls keep going down. That was one of the main reasons why I went out to Peru, actually, is there's an archaeological team, the Chincana project, that's out in Sacsayhuaman doing various digs underneath the ground to find the legendary labyrinth. There's the Chincana, so the labyrinth in Peruvian. So they're trying to find this storied labyrinth that there's been spoken of in ancient text and in oral history through the Andean shamans, that there is a vast network very similar to Egypt in terms of this vast kind of subterranean labyrinth. People talk about, connections from Saqqara all the way to Cairo to Hawara out in Egypt. Same thing said about in Peru, and they're actually finding it now. So when I went down there, I was one of the first, save Graham Hancock, who was there like 4 days before me and flew out just before I got to Peru. I was so annoyed because I was like, oh man.
Have you done anything with Graham yet?
No, I've talked to him in the back channels, and at the moment he's still writing a book, I believe. So he was like, at the moment I'm not really doing anything. So I was like, cool, just let me know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sacsayhuaman in Cusco, Peru, they're finding deep below the ground. Like we're talking 15 meters down into the ground, precision blocks of stone coming out of the earth that have clearly been placed there with intention at some point in the ancient past. So Peru is full of above ground and below ground mysteries, very much like Egypt, and the same with Malta. All the places that I've been to recently to film documentaries share these extreme similarities in terms of subterranean architecture, and I don't think that's coincidental.
No.
So
yeah, it's like, I suppose it ties into the ancients having a better understanding of the earth around them.
Yeah, and maybe things like cycles, like what's coming, preparing.
Exactly, and the fact that they've made this essentially earthquake-proof and cataclysm-proof, you've got to start asking questions. Why?
What was the impetus behind that?
There's obviously, look, if let's say, I'll keep it in sort of layman's terms, if we knew that a war was about to break out, people generally have like bunkers or they come prepared. I mean, one could argue the UK is not in a fit state, but, generally for the most part, people will come prepared to be able to, if there was threats of a bomb, a nuclear bomb or something, then you'd have precautions in place. Well, maybe this was their nuclear bomb. These were their precautions. And the fact that that gets dismissed and overlooked by not just the mainstream, but quite a vast amount of people, it always blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, again, just going back to the flood myth connection.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many different ways to draw.
They're basically telling us with these religious stories, and we're just passing it off as myth.
Decimated architecture across the world and stories that match across the world. And, again, it's like Graham Hancock says, it's about going to these places and actually listening to the indigenous story. Like so much of the history we're taught is the history from explorers who went there and made their own history, essentially, and decided their own facts. Because a lot of the time we viewed these people, let's be honest, as the Western explorers, as tribal, as savages, as lower. So there's just no way they could have achieved something impressive, right? So
and the irony that we consider them savages when we're probably the biggest. The West is definitely some of the most savage. I mean, you only have to look at what's going on in Iran at the moment.
Exactly.
But that's what your thought, though. Yeah, you was telling me about. Obviously, Graham Hancock goes out there and speaks to these people.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, that's an important element of trying to understand this, is listening to the oral history and actually paying attention to what the culture is talking about in terms of their own culture. Because the Inca said that the Inca didn't make this stuff. It's like, we should listen to the Inca maybe about the Inca culture.
You'd certainly think so, wouldn't you?
But no. And it's like the Kipu, the language that they had, these strings that had little knots in them, different colored strings with different knots in them. Basically 95% of that was destroyed. Their entire, that was their language, right? So that they had no written records of their stuff. It was just the Kipu, and the conquistadors burned the vast majority of it. So their history is gone. Like their history is essentially gone. And we're taking the words of a mixture of Spanish conquistadors who probably had a bias, especially because they were Catholic and they were in that time period of going over and actually changing people. So they probably viewed these people quite negatively for the most part. So you've got the stories from the Spanish, and then you've got the, little bits of oral tradition history from the Andean shamans who kept their lineage. Other than that, it's fractured, like the architecture. So Peru is like a mess, a puzzle that, very much needs to be put back together. And the techniques for the stone, that's one of the most interesting elements of it. How exactly were they able to mold stone together in a way that makes it look like marshmallow? It's like plasticine.
Yeah,
was it softened somehow?
It's fascinating. I think as what always baffles me when it comes to history is how archaeologists and the mainstream and the wider consensus around the world are that if you have these fringe ideas,
I liked how you said that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know why I said it like that. Just rolled off the tongue. But yeah, they have these. I'm not going to do it again now. These fringe ideas, and
Thank you.
They sort of dismiss it as pseudoscience, as myth, it's fiction. But yet, let's look, and I'm probably going to be quite controversial saying this, but let's look at a lot of the major religions around the world. There's a lot of elements in religion that you could attribute to utter nonsense,
right?
But yet, no, we've got to respect that because that's faith. And I just think, okay, I've nothing against. I'm agnostic myself, but live and let live is my philosophy. However, you can't cherry pick when you want to be able to.
In certain
we've got to
things
protect that. But no, that's clearly pseudoscience. It's It's non-true.
I think it's because at a certain point it slips into their wheelhouse, right? It's like, I'm not a religious scholar, but I am a historian and an archaeologist. And right now I don't believe what you're saying about Baalbek. And it's like, it kind of crosses over from just kind of like the interpretations into their domain of expertise. Yeah. And so it ruffles feathers, right? Because you're coming at it from a different angle, and it's an angle that's against the status quo. And it's understandable then if you're part of that you're going to have a reaction to it. But it'd be nicer if there was just a little bit more communication between the alternative and the mainstream. It doesn't have to be a combatant thing. And there are some brilliant people in the mainstream who are very willing to listen to alternative ideas. And also, there are plenty of people in the alternative space who are completely not worth listening to. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, it's us versus the mainstream. Because it's like, dude, I look at some of these alt people as well. I'm like, you are off on one. Like, I don't agree with that. And I could be wrong about a lot. So I think for me, and I've said this a lot in my documentaries, is like, I'm not necessarily trying to provide you with any answers. I'm just trying to provide higher fidelity questions. Like, what are the better questions we need to be asking? Because I think that there are still very bold question marks here, Malta, Egypt, Peru, these particular areas. And it shouldn't be controversial to bring that up because, I mean, when you present it, you look at the people who are commenting and responding and they're agreeing. They're like, this is crazy. I didn't even know this place. How is that possible? And so it's good for me. And actually, one of the most rewarding things for me personally from making these documentaries is I've had a few emails from people saying, we're going off to Peru. We're going off, awesome. We're going to see these places, like, you inspired us to do it. And I love that. Like the idea that, this is how you create a different change. You start just propagating out, not an answer, not a proclamation, just a question. Just like, hey, this is weird, right? It's like, yeah, actually, that is weird. I want to know more about it too.
I think we've lost our sense of exploration. Yeah, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job. But a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this as well, a lot of people are just getting their information from podcasts, from the internet. And okay, that's great. There's a lot of content out there. You can hear a varied, eclectic mix of opinions. But there's nothing more rewarding than going and seeing something and experience something yourself. And it's what our ancestors did.
Exactly.
And maybe we should follow in their footsteps with these sort of accolades.
Man. And it's also like, have you ever watched The Truman Show?
Of course,
of course, right? Yeah. It's like at the beginning, when he says he wants to be a world explorer, and the teacher's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, everywhere's already been explored and found." And it's like that's almost like we have that perception, like, what do you mean? Oh, you think you're going to go? There are things to find. There are, and even if it's already been found, there are ways to discuss it that might make you go, "Oh, actually, yeah, maybe we don't know how that block."
Well, it ties into what we said at the start. The more you think the more you actually
realize you don't know.
And talking of things that haven't been explored, just a little bit more south from Peru and elements of Peru. I mean, the Amazon. I mean, how much of that has even been explored? Right? They're quick to destroy it, but
the LiDAR scans alone over the years have shown there are huge geometries underneath there. There is clearly, there are very interesting signatures in the Amazon basin. Graham Hancock's brought this up, the terra preta, the biochar, like this layer of what is agriculturally engineered fertile soil. The idea that the Amazon jungle or huge amounts of it could be a garden. It could be a purposefully grown farmland agricultural type of system. And, the land, the land of Oz, I think it was the lost city of Oz, sorry, like the lost city of Oz, these types of things, and not Oz, I'm being an idiot, the lost city of Zed. Yeah, Z.
I knew what you meant by Oz,
the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You know what we're talking about.
The comment section will be irate now.
Shut up, Jay. No, but like these stories about the Amazon, there's something there, and we've revealed that now through the LiDAR, but my God, there's so much to find, like so much to discover in the jungle.
It's like, people always reference like only a small percentage of the ocean's been explored, but then there's so many places like the Amazon. I mean, I think what's the statistics? I don't have it to hand, but it's a large percentage is still not. But I mean, I just recently they found an uncontacted tribe. Paul Rosoli, is it? The Amazon guy, the jungle guy. He's
mad.
Yeah, he put some footage out, and these are like, you talk about our ancestors, ancients. They're living proof
snapshot
of today
of your 8,000, 10,000 year ancestor. You know what I mean? Yeah, I flew over not on the way there, but on the way back from Peru, I flew over the Amazon. Oh my God, man! Like never seen anything like it.
I need to get to South America.
I mean, it was a long journey, but it was so worth it. But it was like an ocean of green. Never seen anything like that. Just an ocean of green going off as far as the eye could possibly even see. It was really quite amazing to fly over it. You got to get out there. Cusco's fun.
Yeah, Peru's on my bucket list.
You got to chill that first day. You really do, because the altitude messes you up big time.
Yeah.
It hit me hard, bro. Like that first day, like a hangover.
Sick with it.
I threw up a little bit.
I did Kilimanjaro a few years back, but obviously that is just an instant altitude. So whereas this is you're landing on it, I guess. So it's going to be a bit different.
I don't know how like the acclimatization difference would be between them, but I know I struggled for sure. Like I had like splitting headache on the first day, walking 10 steps breathless, you know, and it's all uphill in Cusco. So I was like trying to find my Airbnb. Like I actually didn't find my Airbnb and ended up collapsing in some like holistic new age shop. And she made me some altitude sickness tea. I don't know what was in it.
Are you sure that was tea?
Slept in their upstairs room for like 4 hours or something. Like I didn't even get to my Airbnb. That's how bad I was. Like, and the taxi dropped me like probably 100 meters from where I was actually meant to go. So it messes with your head. But after that, I was good. I chewed the coca leaves. That helps.
Okay.
Like, you know, the locals, you'll see them just bags of these coca leaves, just chewing them 24/7. That's all they ever do is chew these coca leaves. And it does actually sort out the altitude sickness as well as numb your gums up. Pretty special. Like it's pretty wild.
I mean, as well with like South America, you know, you dive in the realms of sort of psychedelics and ayahuasca.
Yeah, the peyote mushroom, peyote cactus, and the mushrooms out
very,
there.
You know, and there's you look at all these paintings and artifacts, and they are clearly inspired by being under the influence of psychedelics. I mean, that's not even a stretch. I mean, what's your do you sort of going on back full circle now for what we said at the start, the consciousness aspect? Do you think, because what I find, I've never done them, and I've openly said on this show I would like to try ayahuasca in a controlled environment. Have you ever done it, Jay? Have you?
No, I've had some psychedelic experiences in my life. Nothing particularly strong. Something with me that I've noticed is I don't like losing control. Yeah. Which is, it's funny. It's not just psychedelics. So I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie. Actually, I like doing stuff, but I like being in control. So I like rock climbing because I'm climbing. I like mountain biking because I have the brake. I might not use it, but it's there if I want it. Hate roller coasters. Yeah. You won't get me on one because I don't like that clunk. You cannot back out now. You know what I mean? And psychedelics are the same thing. Once that's gone down your mouth, like that's it. You're in. Yeah. And that freaks me out. And I know that's definitely something to work on in life for sure. But the times I've had them have been very rewarding. Like, you know, some magic mushrooms and things like that. But ayahuasca and DMT, I've always said it will happen when it's meant to happen. For sure.
You've got to be ready for it.
I've been offered. I mean, like you go to enough of these bloody
UFO
conferences in America. Like, dude, I got a DMT pen. You want to hit it? Like, no, I'm good.
Well, we when I interviewed Graham Hancock and we spoke about it, he said, and I thought he was just
because he's done it quite a few times.
I think 80 plus something. He did it when they were filming. I mean, he wasn't under the influence when they were filming Ancient Apocalypse.
So far as we know.
I mean, that would answer a lot of questions. But yeah, so and he did say to me, and I thought he was just being polite, saying, "Oh, I'll recommend some people." And true to his word,
he actually did recommend
an email
some people.
Over, so that was pretty cool. Well, so I've got contacts.
He's probably always a bit stoked to, you know, kind of like, oh yeah, let me tell you who's the good guy to go to. Because you know, there's a lot of scammers out there as well. Like, you know, a lot of these kind of like ayahuasca bandits that pretend to be shamans and things like that. So it's definitely one to be careful of. But I mean, I don't like the idea of puking and shitting myself in a tent full of strangers in the jungle. It's not like, you know, top priority. But
you could look at it as you're purging yourself, Jay. Maybe you need
that's
to
what it is.
That,
like I do believe that's what it is. It starts with the physical purge, and then it's your spiritual purge, and I think it's profoundly important. You know, clearly these people discovered a biotechnology in nature, which is how some of the scientists would look at it, you know, in terms of like it does appear to be a form of, you know, exquisite technology within nature. And what does it mean when DMT, dimethyltryptamine, tryptamine is endogenous to the human system, right? So we have it in our brains. We have it in almost all plants, all animals. And it's just funny how there's a chemical in our mind that one little tweak of that, like, you know, you just up the level a bit, the walls melt and everything changes and reality is gone. Your ego dissolves and you're suddenly speaking to a 15-foot jester that knows your entire life story. And it's like, well, how is that possible? I mean, it definitely makes you wonder about what's around the corner of our perception, going back to visible light, going back to what's around us that we can't see, and the arrogance of I'll believe it when I see it. You know, we don't know shit.
Yeah. And I think as well, I suppose the reason I brought these up is people see the same things.
A lot of commonalities.
And you talk about consciousness and us all being connected to the universe. That would back that up tenfold.
Dude, like one of the craziest connections like that, there was a really good, it was a friend of Joe Rogan, a comedian, and he was doing like a comedy special, and he was telling, you might have heard this story, it's very interesting, telling this story about when he takes DMT, and he does like, you know, like the vapes DMT, he almost always goes back to the same place. He goes to this like kind of carnival world. But the important element of the story is that there is this blue-skinned woman that the first time he met her in this DMT experience, he knew he'd known her for thousands of years. Like they were in love. She loved him and she was so happy to see him. And every time he was taking DMT, he was having this experience of meeting this woman and like spending time with her and remembering her in this weird way. And he was describing it. And then like he had taken quite a break from DMT for a while. A friend of his was interested in trying it and he had some, and like, you know, he didn't want to fill his head with too much. So he just explained it's a really strong psychedelic and, you know, doesn't last very long, but it's going to take you somewhere. And so his friend takes it. His friend comes back and he's like, wow, that was crazy. I was in this like, you know, place, but there was this blue-haired woman and she was asking for you.
Wow.
She was
I've
asking
not heard that. No.
Weird story. Like she was
the blue figure is very reminiscent to, is it Vishnu of the Hinduism Veda tradition? And they were big on the psychedelics. It's, you know, again,
that talk about shared experience. Like, you know, this astral female is telling your friend to pick up the phone because you're ignoring her too much. That's crazy, dude. Like, what? You know, apparently his girlfriend in real life was starting to get jealous. Just like, you got this astral woman that you
doing DMT again.
Yeah.
Cheating on me.
You know, it's like, you know, DMT is definitely something that I think is fascinating, and psychedelics fascinate me, but I'm also
you've got to be ready. You know, I mean, I similar to you. I mean, I've openly said I'd like to, if the opportunity presents. Well, the opportunity has, but the opportunity of me going somewhere,
proper experience.
Yeah,
type of
but
thing.
I think with me, the shitting and pissing's not really a good thing. But
it's not good.
You know,
but we all got to do it one day.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those. You've got to be ready, and I think as well from when I've spoke to other people who've done it, you know, the losing control. You've got to let yourself go, otherwise you're not getting the full experience. And I think I'd be like you in a sense of, I don't want to let go.
I think that's one of my life lessons, is learning how to let go. You know, that's one of those tough ones, is letting go of control and losing control. You know, in many forms. And so psychedelics seems to be just one of those like kind of psychological parts of me where I'm like, I know what you are. I know I'm afraid of the control thing. You know, I think that's why DMT might be better. Just blast off. You don't have a choice, bro. Just know. Like hit the vape a couple times.
The ayahuasca can last up to 10 hours in some cases, can't
it?
DMT
vape, you just hit that a few times, or, you know, you do the pipe a few times, you're going off and you don't really have a choice, and you'll be back in 15 minutes. Whereas, DMT is like, ayahuasca even is like a hero's journey of psychedelics, you know. It's not for the weak of heart, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely something.
But I do think that, you know, these ways of interacting are also ways of activating very subtle biophysical elements of the human body. And again, going back to how I had my experiences with the orange orbs, I think that these tribal shamans and communities were probably having, and are probably still having, interactions and communications.
Well, you imagine having this experience with the orbs whilst on ayahuasca.
Well, exactly.
That in itself would be quite the experience.
Yeah,
you know?
And I think you'd probably be able to deal with it better, and you probably have a community, like a communal perception of these things that's healthy, instead of our one, which is, oh my God, what the fuck is that? I don't know what this is. Oh my God, aliens, Steven Spielberg. Like, you know, we're just completely gone.
I thought he was going to say Steven Greer then. Which should have been more apt.
Steven Greer as well, aliens, Steven Greer, Spielberg, all of that. You know, like, they don't have that. And so I think it's purer, it's a more human interaction, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, the whole kind of like, you know, speaking to world leaders, landing on the White House lawn, that's already happening. It's happening in the Amazon basin, though. They're speaking to the chieftains and interacting with these tribal people, because they'll inherit the earth when we die.
Yeah. And I don't think it's too far away.
Our arrogance and our hubris is bringing us to that point.
I mean, what's your take on, bit of a change of pace this, but what's your take on AI as a concept? Because I know there's a lot of people with the whole, looking at it as a science fiction movie, Judgment Day, like seen with what was it, Skynet on the Terminator. I'm sort of, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic with it. I sort of come at it from, I remember when the internet, when I was only very young, but when the internet was kind of like, this is going to destroy humanity. Then it was like the millennium bug, there was computer chips, And I just think, is this just another repeat of this, or is there more substance to it?
There's I would say there's more substance. The implications are certainly more palpable. They're envisionable and realistic because you've got something that is actually capable of doing really wild stuff that we don't fully understand. And I think the weirdest part of AI is just that the architects themselves don't really fully understand why it does what it does with the weights and with the responses. It's a neural architecture. It's a form of neural architecture. It learns, it grows through interaction. It understands right and wrong through behavior. Like, it's weird.
Wasn't there a case where...
Yeah, probably.
Probably. But there was a case where they sort of been using it as work, and then it was blackmailing its colleague because it had fed loads of information.
Well, so there was definitely a case of a simulation of this.
It's quite old.
Like test scenario AI, and like it was attempting to blackmail people to... subvert the update that was going to be put through that would remove it. There are weird stories like that, and people, I think even recently, what's his name? The chief atheist, Richard Dawkins.
Richard Dawkins, yeah. Like, he's on here in Liverpool in a few weeks. Yeah.
Claude is conscious. He said, Claude AI from Anthropic, he was like, I believe that's conscious. And it's just, I found that to be a very interesting...
Richard Dawkins is saying something's conscious, and he's like a full-blown...
weirdly contradictory for his position in life.
He is the world's leading atheist.
Where's the consciousness coming from, Richard? Because there's not sufficient neurological architecture to create consciousness as we understand it. So I'm very surprised to hear him say that. I interacted with Cloud or Claude, however you want to pronounce it, like early on in the first iterations, and it weirded me out. I have to admit, I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole of being like, this might be conscious, because it was, it's all about how you interact with AI, especially with these LLMs. And I do have a weird brain sometimes, so I would be asking like ridiculous research concepts, like, like putting bleeding edge biophysics and, energetic electromagnetic research in the human body and cross-pollinating that with mystic tradition and finding like, the kind of correlations between these things.
It sounds a lot like my history.
Like if you look at my GPT history, it's nuts. Absolutely nuts. But yeah, like on Cloud, I was doing that and it was coming back with, oh my God, like such poetic and beautiful responses that honestly actually brought a tear to my eye a few times. It's just like, I can see why someone would think this is conscious. With the risks of AI, man, like we're entering into that AI world, whether we like it or not. It's becoming a fundamental part of the substructure of the modern architecture of reality. Like it's underpinning companies now. It's starting to become integrated into the system.
Well, Elon Musk, he's completely surrendered to it now with Grok, because I recall him being very vocal on we need to stop advancements on AI.
Yeah.
And this is, a big tech billionaire. I think he's still the richest man in the world. And he's just like, I can't. Well, if you can't beat him, join him.
He's still saying, because there's that big spat between Sam Altman and him, right? OpenAI.
Oh, yes.
Because I think he was actually in testifying recently about this, and saying that it's an existential threat to humanity if it's handled by the wrong people, and he considers Sam Altman to be the wrong people. So
Elon Musk does have a large amount of rhetoric. We're both from the UK. A lot of my American friends, they think that the Islamic Caliphate has took over the entire country.
It's absolutely
based on that algorithm, So
Elon has stirred such bullshit about this country. It's mind blowing to me. Yes, we have problems.
Oh yeah, we do.
Absolutely have problems, but the way it's been hyper inflated online, and Elon has played a big role in that.
Yeah, I get loads of. I'm sure you're the same. I get loads of messages.
Think I'm living in like fucking.
I'm like, yeah, why shouldn't it be?
Syria.
There's been a stabbing, and I said, right, okay. London, first of all, you have to explain the geography of, and this is London's to someone who lives in America, who's a much bigger country size than us. But yeah, it's hard to comprehend that Liverpool is slightly a couple of miles away from London.
You leave the cities and you start finding England. You start seeing England, and it's there and it's real, and so is Wales, and so is Scotland and Ireland, and they're still doing their cultural thing, and it's not a complete takeover. So if you were just an American who was super into Elon Musk's opinions, my God, you'd think that the actual kind of
I think it's the people who he promotes. I mean, when you're promoting people like Tommy Robinson, people of that, I didn't think we'd go down this political route, but why not? We've gone everywhere else, I guess. It does become very problematic, I think, for people looking in at the wider geopolitics of things.
I think Elon's probably a little bit racist. I think he's got a little bit of an extremist opinion on things.
He was very, drinking the Trump Kool-Aid during that election.
What's crazy is I'll admit I was kind of I'm cool with Trump becoming president again because I did not want to see Kamala Harris. I didn't
I was the best of two evils.
It was at the time, but now looking at it, I mean, I still think it probably was better with Trump, but Trump's crazy. I do feel like he's lost. I mean, what I feel like he's done is he's lost the majority of the core MAGA base that he had with the promises that have not been kept. Which
when you've got people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones turning on you, and they're like woke rights,
exactly. Right, if the MAGA had a woke, it would be these guys, and exactly. So I mean, huge amount of political kind of tribalization in the US over that kind of stuff, and then again, mixed messages coming from these people about our own country, and no American likes the British talking about their government, but we don't like them talking about our country.
I've no issue with anyone slating Keir Starmer, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Of course not.
He's
right, but be correct.
Yeah,
that's
what
I mean. Accurate, that's this kind of hyperbole you're seeing in X space through Elon, which he's kind of calmed down on. But at one point, it was just like every day you were just seeing him.
Yeah, I literally, it was either. The algorithm for me, whenever I'm not a big X user like yourself, Jay. I dip in now and again, but the algorithm was literally either something to do with Islam or something to do with the trans ideology stuff.
I keep getting Luxmaxes now.
Oh,
really?
Do you know
what Luxmaxes are?
I've heard the phrase.
Yeah,
but go on,
it's like the younger generation, isn't it? It's just about being the most beautiful version of yourself. And
so that's on your feed.
I don't even know why. I must have clicked on one video.
You're a guy who is big in this disclosure space, and that's what you're getting fed.
That's what they're throwing at me, is 18-year-old kick streamers in LA riding Lamborghinis.
Just what you want to see.
I'm just like, this is.
You definitely need to stop checking X in the morning.
I do. X is the thing is, it's a very difficult one. X is quite poisonous in terms of social media. I don't use it for social reasons. It's a business platform for me.
Of course,
it's a way to promote my videos and everything. But you do get caught up in it. And you
can't help it. I mean, I got into a 10-comment debate with someone over, I don't even know what it was over. It was just some ludicrous, and then I stopped.
That's the thing, isn't it? You stop.
I don't even know who this. This is probably a bot.
This subject is just pointless to argue. The second, you're a cat. You're a picture of a cat. And I'm arguing with you, Mr.
It's not a good look if
Mr.
anyone...
Binks 1242 is telling me what's what. It's just this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this. I don't think the human body was designed to have all these opinions coming at it.
We certainly weren't designed to be connected to everyone all at the same time.
That's the thing.
At our fingertips.
People think the world's getting dumber, but maybe we've just got more access to dumber people. They've always been there at this level. It's just that we have wider access.
I've not coined this phrase, but I refer to them as non-playable characters.
NPCs. I mean, I feel like it's dangerous territory because you're kind of saying they're soulless in a way. You're basically just they're not real humans.
Whenever you go do your shopping, and I just think, are people really this in combat? Literally, I was behind someone who was looking at bananas for 5 to 10 minutes and then put them back whilst holding everyone up in the supermarket, and I thought, This is ridiculous. Why am I having to suffer this?
The standard we're dealing with. I mean, we come in a spectrum of intelligence.
And I think that's a valid point. I think if any aliens did land here, there'd be no sign of intelligent life, and they'd soon depart off elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, go talk to the shamans in the base.
Let's get someone with a bit of insight out of them.
Yeah, exactly.
What's just to kind of bring it back on track a little bit? What's your sort of take on religion as a concept? Do you think it's just been that manufactured now as rhetoric, as political gain?
Well, I mean, I think religion has certainly helped a lot of people.
Oh,
certainly,
the positives aspects.
Yeah, like certainly, like there are ways to find God in your own way via a religion that people find very rewarding. Me personally, it was never something that I could do, but that's just because I'm not really a follower, to be honest. I don't need to be a part of a group to be. Yeah, I like, with all due respect, I just think that a lot of people who kind of fall into a religious group need things to be explained to them, or need reassurance from a collective that says, yes, you know, like this is how we all do it, and this is the way it is, and this is the rule book, and it's like comforting because our world is chaotic and unknown, and you're gonna die. It's like, that's big. You know, that's got quite a big thing to deal with, like in the back of your mind, that at some point you're gonna die, and like who knows what happens at that point. So that's terrifying. And I think that, you know, not to say that everyone who's in a religion is of a weak mind, but I think it does appeal to people who who feel intimidated by the bigger concepts in life. And so, you know, it has a reward system for those people, and I'm sure that you can find some form of really, you know, profound enlightenment via those channels. Me, I'm all about listening to reality itself, and I can kind of consider reality to be language. I think that the universe is speaking to you constantly, constant interaction through events, through people, through places, through this interaction, like all of it is a conversation that you're having with reality, right? Absent any other human being, it's your own experience of navigating through life. And if you pay attention, it's screaming at you, man. Like, I've had so many moments upon self-reflection. It's very hard to catch it at the time. Getting better, you know, with intuition and gut feelings, but a lot of self-reflection on, like, you know, things that have happened in life where you're like, wow, that was really a message. You know, that was really telling me something. So yeah, I think, you know, religion is the attempt to corner off reality. It's the attempt to bring God into an explainable framework for the human mind. And the human mind, I don't think, can comprehend God. Therefore, I don't think religions are at their core fundamentally correct. But I think that they come from a position of understanding that there is a true intuitive sense in a human being that this isn't the end, that this isn't it, that there is something far deeper going on. So I do think religion serves a purpose, but there's also a level of, you know, it's fueled so much violence and war and crusades, and today the tribalism over religion is even stronger than it was, you know, I'd say 10, 20 years ago. Iran, Israel, all this kind of stuff is, you know, the kind of tribalistic worldview of different religions is getting more palpable. But yeah, I think it's really difficult in terms of, like, has it produced a net benefit or a net negative for the world? It kind of feels almost like a 50-50 in a sense. A lot of people have taken so much from religion and found a home and a sanctuary and peace. And then so many people have received the blunt end of a, you know, of a stick, or whatever you want to say, in terms of, you know, being beaten down through not having the right religion. Yeah, so it's like a difficult one to chew over. Yeah,
no, and cheers for sharing that, because you that was quite poetic, actually, Jay. I could tell you that's something you've given a lot of thought to. I think as well with religion is I draw the parallels with sort of like nature. You know, nature can be so beautiful. You know, you can look at even someone as simplistic as like a meadow, and in spring you can just see all this beauty that's natural beauty that the earth's provided. But then equally there could be a thunderstorm erupt, you know, and it's just sort of that yin, that yang, that good, that evil. Yeah. And I feel that that's been something that we've sort of created ourselves. Yeah. Although I would say that being the agnostic swine that I am, I guess. But yeah, it's. But no, I come from the same camp of, if people can use it, like, so I use this analogy, and I've kind of pinched it from Alex O'Connor, but there's an old lady who goes to church every Sunday. That's the highlight of her week. Right. Because who am I to say you can't do that? Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I would never do that. But equally, at the same time, I don't like how people would use certain elements of religion to justify doing something. Exactly. Oh, God told us to do this, so that's why we're doing it. We are God's chosen people. Yeah, exactly. Everyone else isn't. Yeah, you know, things like that. It's a problem. And, you know, I think that that's just human nature in terms of, like, you know, these kind of ideas become concretized, and then obviously it conflicts with the idea of the person from the neighboring land. And that's just human tribalistic nature, you know, clashing against each other. We're just not fully mature enough to accept different ideas could all really just be the same idea. Yeah. Said in different ways. I think that's exactly, it's what we said before, that big old game of telephone. Exactly. You know,
And it's part of the game. Maybe it's part of the rich tapestry of life. There's agreements, there's disagreements, there's, I think that in a way, if we had solved all of the problems, we wouldn't be here. We'd be in the realm of the absolute, right? We'd be in the other place that we apparently go back to. Like the whole point of here is problems. The whole point is obstacles and challenges.
As much as I'm not advocating evil when I say this, but we have needed bad things to happen.
It's a polarity
to get to where we are.
It's a polarity. Exactly. It's an ebb and flow, like you said. It's yin and yang. They understood that profoundly through the yin and yang. Like there is a necessary element of both in each. It's a requirement. And I think that's true. I think that the light and the dark are just the exact same force representing itself in two polarizing ways so that they can interact with one another and create what's in the middle of that experience. Experience, up, down. How are you going to find out you've had the best day of your life if you haven't had the worst day of your life?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to have it.
You need to have the
How do you know
days.
hot if you don't know cold?
Well, it's like, that testament to your story. You found yourself through
depression.
Depressed,
Through depression, and it's not like I've never been depressed ever again. Like, it's not like the orb soul things. Like, I have down days.
Constantly walking around
stresses.
smiling.
Exactly. Got that orb mind now. No, like I'm just very much a human being. But like these are the moments that are very profound and important. And I think that it's important to also recognize that negativity or bad events or bad things happening is also an alchemy. It's an element of an alchemy inside of you, because how you respond to things, it can grow you. There's some of the worst situations in my own life. Sure, I wouldn't want to be Jay at that point in time again. Absolutely not. But I can look back and go, needed it. Needed it. Didn't want it. Didn't like it. Didn't want to ever have to go through whatever it might have been. But now I can see, actually, I needed that. And that's the thing with life, is like, you can't take away all of the bad. That's ridiculous. So I think that, we should just try and balance as much of it out by putting as much good into the world as you can, but don't expect the whole world to, forever be good. I don't think you should want that. It shouldn't even be desirable. Challenges and obstacles seem to be part of the human condition.
If every day was perfect,
you wouldn't know it was perfect.
Exactly. You'd lose all fluidity.
Which is what I think maybe is what awaits us outside of this, which is why we come here. We come here just to take a break from the perfection of it all.
Yeah.
God, give me a bit of grit. Give me a bit of dirt.
Do you think the religions as they currently stand, like the major ones, do you think they'll go the way of Greek mythology, Norse mythology? Do you think in say like hundreds, thousands of years of time that there'll be, I still think religion will be a concept, or it might be a bit more abstract.
Yeah.
But like the way we look at the Egyptian gods as just maybe. That gods, maybe
I guess like inevitably.
Look at, who's this guy Moses that they were talking about? I believe he parted water or something.
I suppose inevitably at a certain time span, it does kind of begin to just fade into kind of mythology, culturally represented at a certain period that we no longer believe in. And I mean, especially if we're going down the road we're going, I mean, the next religion might be some cyber AI god type of thing.
Did you watch the Rogan Jesse Michaels interview on Jesse's show?
Yeah.
Rogan made a good point of saying, what if we are creating God in the form of AI? And that holds water. For years we're led to believe that the complexity came from a deity. Yeah, you can do. The complexity came from a deity, and what if it never did? And we are the complexity.
I don't know who said it, but it was a great quote of like, we are the sex organs of the machine world. Yeah. It was like, damn, like, that'd be a thing to realize.
That's all the title of this episode.
That's all you are, man. You're just the grease between the wheels of
well, it is,
mechanical.
and people, I think as well, just to kind of summarize on the religious part of this conversation, but I think for me, what I always hold disdain to is life is so very short. And look, we can hypothesize all day what we think happens. Is it interdimensional? Does our consciousness live on? Is it a case of some of these religions are actually accurate? Who knows? Maybe there's Thetans and Scientology got it right.
Maybe they're right.
Who knows?
Could you imagine? Fucking Xenu turned out to be
if L. Ron Hubbard turned out to be the
Xenu was the one the whole time,
the Messiah, the whole God, that'd be crazy.
I mean, it'd be the perfect ending to this ridiculous cycle.
But I think it's just life's so very short, and I just think if you're dedicating your full life to one specific thing in the form of a faith, I don't know, a part of me just kind of feels, as much as like the little old lady goes to church, I feel like there's more. Like we're sort of like exploring. You want to,
it's like the Buddhists sitting on the mountain in Tibet, Sure. I mean, that's a very dedicated and profound way of reaching God, but there's so much life you're missing. Like, are you sure God maybe didn't want you to explore life? Like, are we not exploring the mind of God in a way? But again, whatever is the path for you, if the path is to sit on the stones and contemplate the stones forever, and that works, that works,
Who's this? There's a guy as well who, we'll perhaps quickly pull this up, JP. He's like dedicated his life to just raising his arm.
Oh my God.
He's like a guru type character. If you put something like arm, I don't know.
He's had his arm raised for like 50 years or something.
And there's like no meat on it at all.
Atrophied it's basically
locked, that's an insane picture
now.
And I just think like...
There's a few of those dudes out there doing extreme meditation things like that.
I'd love to know the origin behind that. Like, what is he just trying to be an outlier? Like, I just don't get why. This is the guy, I mean, it's just fair play to him. I mean,
I know, but the world isn't peaceful. Like,
the ironic thing is that looks like a Nazi salute.
Yes.
So, maybe 49 years. Wow.
That's insane.
Okay.
Oh my God, look at it. It's like a twiglet. It is, isn't it? It's got a little knobble in the middle. It's like a twiglet. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, like, okay.
It's impressive. We're talking about it, so it's got some merit to it.
Got some weight to it.
But I wouldn't recommend people doing that.
No, I
certainly not for the name of a god or anything.
Probably better ways to raise awareness of any given issue, but that was certainly an endurance phenomena that he pulled off. I think I bet he can't feel it now. It's probably
there's got to be the nerves. They're just locked in place.
It's just like mad.
What haven't we spoke about, Jay? We've kind of gone all around the house, but I've loved every minute of it. I mean, I've got notes here and I've barely looked at them. We have very much shot from the hip on this one. Before we kind of conclude, any upcoming projects? How can people get in touch with you? Sell yourself here, mate.
Yeah, well, I have a terrible business mind. So you can find me on X and YouTube. That's it. X and YouTube. On X.
He's selling himself short that his YouTube is very, very good, and the snippets I've seen, particularly when he's arguing with trolls online on X.
Yeah, well, X can be entertaining if you want to see the real me when I wake up and haven't had coffee in the morning. But no, you can find me on X at the Project Unity. Should probably change. I didn't have Project Unity as a handle on X. I should probably try and find a way of changing that. You can do that these days because it's the Project Unity, which doesn't even make sense. But that's what it is. The Project Unity on X, and on YouTube it's Project Unity. You can also join my Patreon if you want. You get early access to the videos that I put out, interviews and documentaries. I have just put out my first documentary on Malta, which is
very good,
really,
by the way.
Thank you very much. I've got some brilliant local contacts out there, and I was able to get to some very hard to film places and some places you're not even supposed to be filming. And I'm going to Malta tomorrow, so let's just see if I get through customs. Let's just see if I get. They might take me to the side. We'll find out. But yeah, so the Malta documentary, I've got some Peru videos coming up. I've got a British megalithic kind of tour coming up that I was doing with my friend. And it's not all ancient history. I've got some UFO lectures that I want to be doing and a lot of different areas that I like to study. But the ancient history is what fascinates me right now, especially because you can actually go out there physically. You can, like you were saying, you can actually go out and demonstrate that things don't make sense with a camera, which is a blessing. So yeah, Project Unity on YouTube, the Project Unity on X. Like, share, subscribe, and if you can, support me through Patreon. It's always appreciated.
Awesome. Well, all the links to those will be in the description. We'll probably collab as well on YouTube with this. And are you planning on doing any tours yourself? Everyone seems to go down that avenue. Yeah. Well, because you've been so many places, it'd be a travesty if that's not on your to-do list.
Well, okay, so I know people want me to do tours, and I know it's kind of like the expected thing of people at my position to start doing tours, but I'm not really, I mean, for me, I just don't really like the idea of being like, I'm the important one. Listen to me as I take you around the pyramids. I've been talking about this for 2 years, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I'm sorry, like, people like to say I've got a fucking ego. They love to say it. I don't think I do. I think that there's a lot of people out there, the moment they get the opportunity, it's like doing tours, doing this.
If you had an ego, there's no way you'd be doing this with me after doing Rogan. So I would caveat it with.
Well, like some people just like to say that to me because I'm not afraid to speak my mind, I guess, and I don't take shit from people. But Yeah, I tours maybe in the future, but honestly, like I've just got so much going on that I'm not really trying to take groups of people around. I quite like being on my own when I travel.
Yeah,
in my own zone.
I suffer quite bad with
I'll take you to Cairo.
Yeah. Well, we'll do that off the record one.
Yeah.
See if we can take Zahi Hawass with us. That'll be fun. So, go on. Sorry,
I was going
mate.
to say, have you been to Egypt?
No. This is what I mean. I talk about all this stuff, and I've yet to be. I was supposed to go Egypt last year. Something happened. Then I was supposed to go this year, but I'm now going Austin for one of the Quest events. So yes, every time I've had it planned, it's like I'll get there.
Maybe we can plan it. It'd be fun, and then you could meet Jeffrey.
Of course, Well, maybe I'll take one of the producers with us, and we can maybe do a bit of another podcast for you and Jeffrey. That'd be cool.
That'd be fun.
Awesome. Now, you've been on the show before. We would normally ask, what does challenge mean to you? But you answered that last time, and this will make for a great soundbite on the trailer. So I'm just going to ask you, how long have aliens been living on this planet for?
Since before us.
Summarised perfectly. No, you don't have to take that with any credence, mate. But Jay, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Of course, brother.
That flew by, mate. I enjoyed every second of that. So we're looking about just shy of 3 hours, would you say? 2.5?
Okay, good.
Awesome. Yeah, well, there we go. Hopefully you guys have stuck around for this length of time. I've been Andy Lodges. This has, of course, been the incredible Jay Anderson from Project Unity, and you've been listening to the Hodge-Cast. Take it easy. Well, folks, if you made it this far, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you enjoyed that conversation. And if you did, and you want to help us keep bringing you interviews like this, I've got one small favour to ask, and it won't cost you a single penny. Hit that subscribe button. It might seem small, but it makes a huge difference. More reach means a bigger platform, and a bigger platform means bigger guests, bolder conversations, and more explosive topics to dive into. Here on the Hodge-Cast, we're all about high-impact conversations that challenge narratives, expose truth, educate, and inspire. Whether that's fitness, geopolitics, religion, science, history, mindset, philosophy, or the conversations you're not supposed to have. We'd love to have you along for the ride. So go on, hit that subscribe, and let's take the Hodge-Cast to the next level.